2nd, 2021, and we need to approve our agenda. We may. Oh wait, let me say who's in attendance. Mary Shevley, Board Member Lucille Cody, Steve Black, Lori Mon, Superintendent Ron Nelson Yellman, Board Member, and Tyrell Pemberton, our UVA, and other staff is with us. So thank you. We will start with an approval of the agenda. So if I can get a motion.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, we'll turn the time over to the superintendent.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to highlight the work we are going to accomplish this summer that I'm very excited about, and I think there's building momentum and building exciting for. As an administrative team, we are charting a course where we will take our San Juan Quest model, it's up here on the wall, and we're gonna go dive into each one of those systems and really distinctly and clearly articulate what's in those systems. What are we doing that is in that system that provides the support or is intended to provide the support to raise and positively impact student learning. And we want to try to make sure that we have clarity within our administrative team, because our administrative team there's many people that are new to our district in the last couple of years. Weren't here when this was established in the very beginning. Now it's evolved every year, but we need to stop and really get deeply and look at it and provide clarity and understanding. Then we will chart an action plan that will involve how do we get the same level of clarity across the entire staff. And everything we do actually starts with the school board. So one of the questions we'll ask as well is, how do we make sure there's clarity at the board level for you board members to be in a position empowered to drive the decisions that you get to make, that you're required to make, that play a huge role in how we're successful in implementing these systems of support in our schools. Well, so in the end, we hope to come away with what we believe is most important to our schools in these systems. It may change. There may be new systems on there. There may be new names, new vocabulary, but we hope to have clarity, understanding, and a plan of how this is going to go out throughout the entire organization and even beyond the stakeholders. We'd like to address this as far as how does it go to parents, how does it go to community, how do we really have a coherent, and a lot of this is being influenced by the book Coherence that we looked at earlier this year, and they referred to the entire organization having a common understanding and vision. And so we're going to try to really invest in that this summer. We have 6 days set aside that we're going to work administratively to chart this plan, and then we'll go from there enacting the plan. And so we will, when we get down to ESSER 3, we might talk a little bit about even some of the money that's coming to us in the CARES Act, might even help provide some of the support for this work we're doing now. So anyway, I just wanted to spotlight that and make the board aware that that is in action as we speak. This is the summer. It's a little different. Most summers we only generally have 2 administrative days during the summer, and this summer we will have at least 6. So just bringing you up to speed on that. And what I plan on is in August coming back to the board meeting with more details of how did that work, and then also to work with the board in your role in being at the head of this organization. So I'm hoping in August I can be on the agenda to report back, or someone will be.
Thank you.
I'm good?
Okay. All right, our discussion items. So number 1, the chapter house requests to utilize the Whitehorse High School sewer. Do you excuse that walk?
I think there we go, there it is. I printed you guys off a copy too, so you don't have to kink your necks. Turn around
Thank you.
and put that swing. Where do you guys want?
Yeah, right there is great.
Okay. Is there an X on the ground?
Yeah.
So, little bit of background behind this, and it has taken me a long time to figure all this out because so the old pool building is the building that you see up in the upper right-hand corner of that sketch down in Montezuma Creek. Aneth chapter has acquired that building. It's gone through several hands. It's been through the county. I think the school district ran it for a while, maybe in the 80s. UNHS had it for a little while. And then it's gone back to the chapter, and it's kind of been, it hasn't been used for probably 10 or 15 years or so. They've decided to change that, to modify that building into a gym, kind of a wellness center type thing, basketball, volleyball. And there will be a small addition onto the east side of the building. One of the issues that we're running into is we're not 100% sure where the utilities come from. We've been told by NTUA that they have not ever provided the utilities to this building. Power used to be Rocky Mountain Power. About 5 or 6 years ago it was switched over, so we think we have a pretty good understanding of the power. Water and sewer, however, the best that we can understand, and from what we're being told by NTUA, is that it has historically come from the school district. And that matches some of our investigations in the field. There is a manhole for sewer that leads towards the school district property. And there's also a water meter that's probably a 1-inch water meter, which means the lines are maybe 1.5 inches or so going over to the swimming pool that supply the old pool. We were told by NTUA and by a couple of people who've been around for a long time that they believe there was an agreement where the school district would use the swimming pool building in exchange for providing water to the building. And I believe, though, that it's been metered. Talking to some of your facilities people, they said that they recall times when they used to send a bill to the county for water. So the reason I'm here today is we need to bring water and sewer back to that building. And before we go working with NTUA, we want to see if the district is amenable to continuing any type of an agreement with the chapter to provide water. It's obviously a lot shorter run, and we don't have to cross the highway, which adds additional cost to the project. And I'm speaking in behalf of our client, who is Amherst chapter. Of course, I don't want to sway your decision in any way, so whatever makes the most sense to the school district is going to work. We believe that the green line you see is the sewer line. That was given to us by NTUA, that GIS data. We believe that they own that sewer line at least up to the school district property. That I'm not even 100% sure about that, and that's what we're trying to find out. But if that's the case, we'd like to continue to hook onto the sewer. There is a chance, talking to Clayton Holt, he told me that there is a chance that that sewer line was abandoned when they replaced that line about 10 years ago or so. And so we would have to investigate to see if this line was connected back in or if it was not. If it is, I believe we'd be okay to just run that over since it's going directly to an NTUA line. The water, on the other hand, although that line is still there, we're going to have to put a fire hydrant next to that building. The existing line that comes from the school is not going to be sufficiently sized for a fire hydrant. And so we would need to run at least a 6-inch line over to the new building, and then we would run a meter off of there for the service line for the building. Now, the question that the chapter has for the school district is, would it be okay to run that water line from the school district's line over, meter that, and then have an agreement between the chapter and the school district where that water is paid for? That's a summary. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Nelson.
Who's the owner of the sewer pump?
So that's owned by NTUA.
So do we know if the school is using NTUA's sewer pump?
They are.
I wonder if we're paying a fee for that use.
Well, Tyrell, that's question number 1.
He's already on it. I can see him writing it down.
So we need to find out what we're paying for that we're using of theirs and we'll check this out thoroughly.
Did you have any questions on that you were able to answer at all?
So I would imagine that you at least pay an impact fee to NTUA for your sewer, based on the number of ERUs for the school district.
So question, what's the, oh, sorry, you're still.
And the electric that you mentioned, the power, like you said, you're correct. They've changed over from Rocky Mountain to NTUA.
Right.
So it's a bit confusing with these recent transitions, so anyway. Okay, thank you.
Mary, do you have a question?
So what's the timeline for making all this happen? I mean, is there a,
So, right now, it's, the two biggest obstacles are this utility situation and the fact that there's an old land withdrawal that's expired for the land that building sits on. So we're in the process of also doing a new land withdrawal for the chapter for that land, so it can be legal. That's probably going to be the limiting factor in our timeline. That could take several months because we have to do all the environmental clearances and everything. So I would say if construction starts in early fall, that would be optimistic.
So if we found out that information regarding that withdrawal, that would give us some time to find out our information?
Yes.
okay,
The one thing about that though, we, regardless of where we come with the water and sewer, we are going to have to design that and get that all done, and so that would add some additional time to, you know, so.
you need some time.
No pressure,
to
but
be able to do
the
that.
sooner we get a decision, the better, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and, so I think maybe your very first question is, would we, you know, are we willing to work with the
Because I don't want to come here and tell
in
you that
order
it's
to-
not possible to connect an NTUA. It is possible. It involves boring under the highway, which is a big expense, and it also would involve getting easements down through that other property that, you know, to connect into the water line, and so
Okay.
it just involves more expense, but
So-
it is possible.
So basically, this is the simplest way to do it. If we will work with that chapter, and then we can, everything would be metered,
Mhm.
and we can come up with whatever agreement we're willing to.
Yeah, and I met with Tom and our maintenance department on this, and Tyrell as well, and anyway, there are some concerns. I wonder about getting to a deeper detail level with our maintenance department, and then maybe bringing that information back to when we address this the next time. You know, Tom's here, so Tom, you certainly can speak, but there are questions like we've faced in the past when we've had other similar type partnerships. If something breaks, whose responsibility, at what point is it this, you know, if the line clogs up, who gets called? Those are real questions that come up for our maintenance department. So I would recommend that, Scoot, that you visit with Tom and the maintenance and you really look at some of those things and make sure those details are available to the board to utilize in any decision you have to make, and that could be brought back to you by the next meeting that we meet. Because I think those are important information that will come up.
And are we not going, will we meet in July, or is our next
You have to
expected
make
board
that
meeting to
decision
be
when we get,
August?
it's on the board agenda to discuss whether we will. So if we didn't meet till August, it would be August 11th. If we meet in July, I think, I can't remember July something.
Just like, no,
August 11th
third
is
week of
possibly
July.
our next meeting. I don't know what that would do to, you know, your timeline, but
Right.
it sounds
That-
like,
It may be a decision I'd have to put in front of the chapter, just let them know, hey, if we need to maybe do both designs, and then if we can do this, then.
yeah. Well, I guess what I'm thinking, I think if you meet with our maintenance department and depending on the details that are come out of that meeting,
Mhm.
I think there would be a recommendation that I would have and that the maintenance department would have of either this is a positive thing to move, and I think that'd be helpful to the board.
Absolutely.
We aren't making a decision, but I think the board would not like to find out that we haven't really got to the detailed level of what does the partnership actually mean when it gets down to the everyday level of what happens if the sewer line plugs
Yeah,
up.
those are really valid concerns.
Who gets called? And at what point does this organization get called? At what point does the school district get called? Those kind of things.
Mhm.
And from there, I think we'll go forward.
Nelson?
Speaking of partnership, is it possible that we might be involving our own water needs with the petroleum as well? With this,
I think we're talking about completely two different water sources. Petroleum is coming out of the San Juan River through water rights, and this is water that we're utilizing through the Navajo Nation utilities. So I think they're two different sources is what we're looking to work out there.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, board? Okay.
Yeah, if there's any concerns that, you know, questions that you would want answered next time I come in, if you want to just run those through Mr.
Do
Nielsen
you
or
know Tom?
I do know
Brett,
Tom,
Can you
yeah.
meet with him and
I can get with Tom.
Yeah.
make sure you have his number? I would recommend that you just schedule a meeting with him,
Great,
maybe with all of us, and we
absolutely, we can do that for sure. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, you guys can keep those.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Murdoch, the policy review.
Perfect.
You've got 2 and 3.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a sped show tonight, so. I'll have to have a board report later. So, policy 5510 was recommended to be updated by the USBE because we ran into a situation regarding a student participating in a graduation ceremony, and we don't have that in policy as of right now. So talked to the superintendent, and he said, would you review that? So these are my recommendations. I have a red line copy, and then I have a clean copy. The red line makes a couple edits, but then also adds 5510.7, which is all about participation in graduation ceremony. So what I'm wondering is, if you want to look at this, you can make an action item on it later tonight and approve, or if you want to give me further edits, then I can have that in place, and if we don't meet in July, we can meet on it in August, and I can have your recommendations on it. So, do you have questions for me about this?
I have one question.
Yes.
In your red line, 5510.7 graduation ceremony,
Uh-huh.
third sentence there, the word "in good standing."
Yes.
What's the definition of that?
That comes from several different school board policies throughout the state, so I utilize some of the similar wording. So I think that's where we come up with that, and if we want to further define that, we can define it below, but there also are in 5510.6, let's see, I think it's 10.1, that talks a lot about there, and then also 10.2 talks about what we might consider good standing.
Would that be meeting the criteria of the IEP?
It absolutely
That's
can be.
probably part of the criteria.
Yeah, and that comes in 5510.3 where we talk about the IEP, so yes. I think that all the good standing comes from the policy above.
Do we need to reference to those numbers, or do we just leave it as that? Is that what your concern is?
I think we should, yeah.
Okay,
In case one ever asks us the same question like I did.
We need to just throw those numbers to refer to.
I can do that, and then I know there's another policy that talks more in depth about graduation credits, so I can reference that policy as well. So I'll put that down as there. Okay. Any other questions immediately?
I'll probably send you a suggested edit.
'Kay.
On the 5510.2, all state and district requirements for diploma have not been met. When I read that, I thought, well, all of them have not been met, so none of them are met. So,
Okay.
one or more, I think is what you need, right?
And again, I referenced other board policies and how they kind of worded it, but yeah, I'm happy to have those edits.
So I'll send
Yeah.
that to you.
And this is all just specifically for students with an IEP, is what we're
It's
discussing
all
right now.
students. It is all students.
It just lacked any specific focus on sped students,
Okay.
which can at times need a different look.
Yeah.
But we didn't have it in our policy to have that different,
Okay.
to have that specific look.
And USBE made it very clear to me that we need to have a policy that addresses all students' participation in graduation ceremonies.
And we were lacking.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
No.
I have a question just because it applies to our recent graduation, but it's not specific sped students. That, do they have to have completed everything before they walk, or are there provisions so that they can go ahead and walk if they haven't completed everything?
We're talking students in general. Yeah, there are students who have worked out an educational plan that will be completed after the date of graduation that are allowed to walk if they are in compliance with that plan.
Okay, thanks.
And that could be part of this good standing, if you want to outline that more.
Oh, I see, yeah, that makes sense.
But, yeah, it's up to the board how they want to
Don't
word
get
that.
a diploma in that little cover
Yeah, well,
until
nobody
they
does.
do it. But yeah, theirs doesn't come in the mail until they've done it, but they may have walked
They,
if
okay.
they have been.
Yeah. And we will have special education students who have not yet earned credits, but they want to walk with their class, and they're going to be with us till they turn 22. And so they don't walk again, but they walk with their class initially, and that's part of this.
Choose a class to walk, I mean,
Yeah.
at the point in time. okay.
Yeah.
Because they
essentially.
could wait as well.
They could.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on that? All right.
Sweet. I'm just going to stay right here.
Okay.
So every 4 years or so, the state of Utah updates their policies and procedures for special education following IDEA, so the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So from the federal level to the state level. So every time that the state updates their policies, we need to update our policy manual. So for those of you who've been on the board, you've probably seen this time and time again. So this is they provide a template, and I followed the template and answered the questions that we've needed to. And I have sent this up to USBE, and it has received approval that you guys could approve it if you wanted to. Our deadline to have it approved by the board is October. So I'm ahead of the deadline, just to make sure if you guys want to look at it, you have time to go through it. It's 95 pages, which there's a lot there. And then it references the state rules, which are about 200 something pages, but that's what SPED law is. And then there's a second document called San Juan, or Comprehensive Assessment of Special Education, or of Specific Learning Disability. And this is referenced on page 19 in the rules. And the reason it's a separate document is this is how San Juan School District identifies and classifies students with a specific learning disability. And that's part of what we agree to do and how we're doing it. So that's how we do business. We could potentially update this without updating our policies and procedures. That's why it's nice to have it separate, and that was recommended by USBE. So my suggestion is that if you are wanting to make an action item, that you do approve both of them, and then we'll indicate so, and then I let USBE know when you're ready, or we could do it in the future. But that's what this is regarding. Any questions? There's a lot there. Okay, yeah, awesome. Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, are you okay?
Yeah.
Want to come on up? What did we got to rescue the alcohol?
Choking on the flavor in my
Are you
gum.
having some water?
Yes, there's a drinking fountain at the end.
Should there be a bottle?
I did get a drink.
Now
What'd you
launch.
say? That would do. Okay, so Bleacher Report reached out to Ron and I, and they want to do a series of videos. Thank you. Where they are featuring football fields that are off the beaten path. Well, not just football fields, any sports arenas, like they're doing basketball fields and stuff like that too. And so they're interested in Monument Valley's field, and what they would like to do is, and then they want something unique to that area too, and so they would like to bring an NFL player to Monument Valley and maybe have them throwing some balls to some of our football players, and then also record the traditional ceremony that we have at the beginning of the year, and just kind of talk about Monument Valley. And while we were talking with them, Ron threw out the idea of maybe they could promote the Hojo book for us, because they have like, he told me, let me see, they have on Instagram alone, they have 15 million subscribers. And so this would go on their Instagram, on their Facebook, on Twitter, on all of those types of things.
Bleacher Report is a national, mostly, I think, over social media. I see lots of their articles, because I'm in the sports world a lot, but they push a lot of sports articles, stories through social media. They may have some kind of a publication, but I'm not aware of that, but I do know.
It's through social media, yeah.
All through social media. So they're pretty big and nationally across the entire nation.
Yeah.
How they found us, must be they have pictures of Miami Valley.
Yeah.
Monument Valley, that explains it.
That is, that they saw that on another report or something, they saw the football field, and so they were interested in it, just called up, and anyway, they did not guarantee, bless you by the way, but they did not guarantee that they would be able to promote the Hojo book, but they said if there's like some way that we could throw it in, that it wasn't like advertising or something, then they may be able to do something like that. So we can't guarantee that piece of that, but we just wanted to let you know that we have this opportunity for them just to come and do that on our football
If
field.
we do move forward, it would include any kind of parental releases, parental permission slips that our district, we've done something similar to this in the past.
Yeah.
And we would have to take those measures as well.
And I also spoke to our medicine man about the recording of the blessing. I wanted to make sure that that was kosher and everything, and he said that he had done something similar for a documentary with Utah State University, and that it would be okay on certain parts of it. So we would make sure that we're being
Sensitive.
culturally aware and sensitive there as well.
They said we're bringing in a current NFL player or a past.
They didn't say who it would be until they were given the go-ahead to move forward, but they said it could be either or. So it could be someone retired or someone current.
Lisa, any questions?
I asked for Aaron Rodgers. So you-
That means bicycle him.
Okay. I can go with that one too.
He's been here before.
And they might get him. A little hard to get Aaron Rodgers.
If he's moving to Denver though.
Yeah,
It'll be on his
a lot closer. Okay, I'm sorry.
Nelson, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, I just want to comment that I like the idea of this event that take place at Monument Valley High School, especially for our students. It's something for them to see and make it a positive experience for them, so I'm looking forward to it. However, we did have a problem several years. I think Mary and I were the only one. You remember that NFL donation that we've gotten at the school and stuff like that. We would just like for you to be transparent on stuff like that with the board and superintendents, so we don't run into those kind of situations again.
Right. And I absolutely would be. And the only thing that we worked out possibly with them is the advertising of the Hojo book. So.
But we just submitted. This is only, how long has this been? Just a couple of weeks, so we're being,
Yeah.
this is coming straight to you as,
Yeah.
I would say unless you were to direct us otherwise, we will probably move forward with this. So I don't know if it's anything you have to take an action on. We will move forward unless we get direction that you would rather us not move forward.
So it'll be their first home football game?
No, they don't want to do it at a football game because they have to get those same releases from the other team and
Oh,
the
sure,
crowd
sure.
and stuff. So just be in those first 3 days before school starts when we do our traditional blessing on
Sure.
the school and kind of where we haven't been able to play sports this year, bless the sports teams and stuff, and then just have our football players dressed out.
Nice.
Those who have signed the release form. I don't want to. be
Yeah,
a part of it.
and my only concern is the same as Nelson, just, really look at things closely, what they're offering, what, just how everything's going to play out. And look at it closely before we dive into something that causes some problems.
Right, right. And Nelson and I spoke about that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Miss Julie. Oh, you get like
It
the
feels
rest
like
of the agenda.
We need a
These
table.
three of them.
I know that's what I was thinking too,
We
just
do.
some,
We'll put it
just
right
for
there.
Put that on our,
I'll just pull this up for now.
we need to
We
get
need a
something.
Tyra, put
more
that on the budget
in.
for your second item.
Just a little
podium or
table or
higher
something.
table
Yeah.
that laptops can sit on, preferably something that's not slanted so that we don't have to worry about.
Oh, Matt's got the sanitation cart. Come on in.
Oh,
That
yeah,
works,
that
we
works.
don't, that works.
But we do need something because people Even Scoot looked a little
Yeah, it would be
lost as they were just hands hanging down.
That would be great. So it feels like school land trust is never ending, right? Here we are again. So, but I'm going to start with the spend plan for Monticello High School. So previous to COVID, they had done a Shakespearean trip with students, and then previous to spend plans as well. And so they did not submit a spend plan with the whole spend plan round. So they're submitting this one for the upcoming year. This would happen in October of 2021, and this would be students that are participating in the humanitarian, any courses in the humanitarian department it would be optional for them to join this event. They would spend one night, and be able to attend 2 plays at the Shakespearean Festival in Cedar City, and then also meet backstage with the cast. And so that would be their experience, and it would cost $120. And so that's what they're requesting for this spend plan. Any questions?
Now that has to go before the public 3 times, so this would be the first time. This wouldn't even be a possibility to approve until September is when you would officially approve this. Because by state law, any spend plan has to have the public has to have 2 opportunities prior to approval to weigh in.
Okay. All right. The next one is our school land trust plans for the upcoming year. We're doing April. We brought them to the April board meeting, but we knew that Monticello High School was going to be in a bit of a transition because they had written in their plan intervention pieces that we knew if we went to an AB schedule and that was solidified, that we would need to make an amendment. And so that's the purpose for bringing this amendment to you today, is they, having the flex time built into the day, they will not need those intervention times that they were paying for teachers to teach, because it will just be built in. And so they have met with their council, gone back and looked at their data, and they would like to adjust by, under that, everything that's in yellow is their amendment, are the amendment pieces. So they would continue with goal number 1, focusing on reading, math, and science. And then to support that, they would like to purchase 5 Chromebooks, 2 chargers, and desktop stations for 4 7th and 8th grade ELA and math classes. The purpose of this is students we are one-to-one, but those are crucial classes, and they use those Chromebooks daily, and if they aren't charged or they have something that's not working, the kids are pretty much just left without a Chromebook and access electronically to the content. So they would like to have 5 backups in their classrooms that they could charge and have, so that students, there wasn't ever any excuse that they couldn't access their content during class. So that would be the purpose of that goal. And then goal number 3 would be a new goal with some of the funding that would be available through not having the intervention teachers being paid. And this would, when they went back to their data, they really looked at some of their needs across the school, and students coming in who are not reading at grade level, and we are required through the consent decree to provide reading courses, at least a reading course in every school. Some are providing more than one, and they would like to provide 2 additional courses of reading based on their data, looking at students. The requirement is that students fall below the 35th percentile on the what we call reading, it's the HMH reading screener, which is basically students read a passage and then they answer questions. If they fall below the 35th percentile, we're required to provide that reading intervention piece for them. But Monticello High School, looking at their data, would like to go 50th below and then make that available to all of those students. Of course, it's available to anyone, but they would make specific contact with those parents and encourage them to enroll their students in that course. That course, they use what we call Language Live curriculum, and it teaches, it's adaptive, but it takes them clear back to foundational skills. So believe it or not, we do have students that are coming into 7th grade that really still cannot decode and read multisyllabic words and read them fluently. So it'll take them clear back to those foundational skills, and it will also focus on vocabulary and comprehension, which we know if we can support kids in that area of comprehension. That's the reason we want to go broader to the 50th percentile, because some of our students are decoding, they're just not fluent, and they really don't have the comprehension skills to be successful in their science. We know how you know, the depth of vocabulary and the multisyllabic words in science and math courses that they need to have to really be successful. So that's what this goal number 3 is. And you can see their data there, but it would also include other students that would bring those numbers up as well. And then one of their goals, one of the administrative goals for the last couple of years has been looking closely at students that are failing in the 7th and 8th grade, and they've had an intervention piece at Monticello High School for several years, and tried to refine that and make that better. That will be going away with the new schedule, but they've really been trying to track the numbers of students that are failing in 7th and 8th grade to try to get them the skills they need to be organized, to understand how to take, how to take ownership in their education, and then also, how to get help if they need help, provide them tutoring support, those kinds of things. So this goal really would be to enhance that support. Last year, we did not see a lot of growth. Mr. Olson put on their Q1 and Q2 data, but did not see a lot of decline that we wanted to see in those failing grades in the first couple of quarters. So this would be looking at hiring and what we would call an academic success specialist. This person would focus specifically on 7th and 8th grade students, collaborate with teachers, collaborate with the counselors, collaborate with students, help them come up with learning logs, help them come up with tracking their assignments, tutor them if needed, but they would be there during the day to support individual students' needs. We know that some of our students that are most at risk, the trend is starting in 7th and 8th grade, and if they don't get out of that, the trend of, having the skills of being a successful student, and some of that is, lack of parental support. And so having someone in the building able to work with those students every day, track them, help them log, help them get their assignments done, help them connect with teachers when they need support, that would really be the purpose of this academic support student person. So those are the changes to the Monticello High School plan. Have any questions with those?
Any questions? Okay.
We really tried to look at, when he went back to his data and took it to his council, I said, really encourage your council to look at, it's easy to look at our data and go to remediation, but look at really building our programs as well. And that's, so they really tried to look at both angles of that, the intervention side and really building our programs, because our school land trust money can be used to do that as well, providing some enrichment and growth to our existing programs.
So Julie, one question I have is that, we see these trust land plans come through all the time, we approve them. And I see this new document that kind of, to me, focuses more on the money, where it's been spent, whatever, but like with that last goal with Monticello High School, it'd be really nice to see if that's their goal this year, that we can see that same data in comparison a year from now. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I think we kind of need to see some of those comparisons with, here they're setting these goals, but are they truly effective? Personally, I don't know that I know that answer. You would know that more. You know that more, but do we know that more? Are those goals truly effective that we are approving and saying, yeah, spend your money for that?
And I think that would be a really good piece for us to share out with you. The principals all put that in their final reports. So that's something that they're required to track for the school land trust, final report that they turn in on the website. And those are accessible to all of us. However, I think just making that a snapshot. So, so the next, let's jump really quick to that next one and I'll tie that in. So we are a new requirement. Every legislative session they love to play with school land trust rule. And this is a new one that came out this year, that the requirement is that the local board is just receive a summary. So it doesn't have to be an action item, but that you receive a summary of the previous year's plan. So it's a little hard for principals to wrap their head around, because they have to go back 2 years, basically. So it's not the current plan, this is 1920. And then moving into this year, we'll do, for this year, at the end of the year, we'll do, our this year's plan. But they're already planning for next year. The plans that you approved were for the upcoming year. So it's a little bit tricky, but I'm thinking, Lori, along the lines of what you just mentioned, that we could add to this, because this is really what I tried to do here, just create a snapshot of the journey so that you could just have a quick review of what was their plan, did they implement it, and then I think we could just add a data piece on here that would be really helpful for you to be able to see, was it was, I mean, they implemented it, this basically says they implement it as they said they would implement the plan, and if not, there's an amendment piece there.
Well, like that Monticello Elementary was, you know, increased math proficiency by 35%. Well, did it, and how much?
Yep.
I mean,
I
even if it
think
was a
that's
percentage
excellent.
next to it that we saw, maybe it was 2 points or, that's what I think I would like to see is, are
Right, I
those
think that would be
goals
easy to,
working?
yep,
So,
easy to do and easy to add on this sheet, and if there's some, you know, if you want this to look any different besides that, just let me
Okay.
know, because Bev and I already said, let's start working on this year's now, so we have it at the end of the year.
I mean,
Because
that's
it's hard to
more
go
do,
back
I'm
and,
sorry.
yeah, go sift through Alio, and it's 2 years previous, it's kind of cumbersome, but.
right, but it'd be nice.
So we'll start
to
working on it, and we will add a data
Okay.
piece, so you know what those results look like, I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions on the summary?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well,
Thank
I'm just
you.
happy to report that all that carryover that we remember, the
Wow.
issues that we, that's
looks good.
The principals have done an amazing job to use their additional, what they would spend their additional allocations on to make that fit. And through COVID, they were able to implement, you know, what they said and make it very meaningful. So I think
Yeah,
that's a
that's
huge
good.
success.
And I like that summary, so.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Who's next? Do they want to chair?
No. We're,
Okay.
actually, it's just the rest of us now.
All
Thank
right.
you. All right, COVID reentry, just an update?
Yeah, just an
Superintendent?
update, just to keep the board abreast. You know, we are still monitoring things, and it's still very different in the two different regions. If we are to look at the mountain region, there's no plans being made of any kind of particular precautions or anything. We've received, you know, all of the new legislative action and things that we have been following have indicated that masks are not mandated. Students will come back to school. It certainly could be a personal choice by a faculty or staff member or a student, but there's no mandate. And so we're not in the mountain region. We are not gearing up with any type of precautions or changes at this point, unless something should change legislatively, which I do not believe it will. Anyway, unless something changed drastically in the data. In the river region, however, and things are very much different. We are still working very closely with the Navajo Nation. They have a weekly update call every Tuesday. Christy's very involved with that. They are putting in place some protocols to reopen schools, and it's kind of evolving as it goes as well. You know, Christy and I visit often about it. Our recommendation is that we watch this evolve even into July, and then we see where it stands at that point, and then either in the July board meeting, or if we don't have one, the early August board meeting, we will bring a reentry plan for the river region. I'm fairly confident that it will include things like a mask mandate, and social distancing, and if not all of the same precautions that we've experienced in our mountain region schools through this year. If we can just get students back in school in the river region, though, we will be very, very excited. We'd love to see our students back, and our teachers and principals and everyone is really hoping that we do get to see that. But we are continuing to work very closely with the Navajo Nation, their health department. There was a new health order even issued today that lifted it did lift help me, Christy, it lifted the stay home order, but it didn't lift the curfew. So now you can go out to a certain time, but you should still be back home. And there are stipulations on groups, 25 or less, and there's a number of things that we're monitoring. But I just want the board to know that we're still following that. You did approve a reentry plan for the river region a few months ago. That's where we will begin any of our work. We'll start with that. We may have to modify it to stay current with the revisions of the Navajo Nation's reentry plan. But we are even having our buildings monitored and inspected now, because that's part of the reentry plan. And we'll come back, like I said, to the board with a more detailed plan as this gets closer. Because right now it's a guessing game where this is going to go. It's back and forth a little bit, even with the Navajo Nation. So that's just an information item. I wanted the board to be aware that that's kind of where it stands. And I don't know if there's any direct questions I can answer or concerns.
Nelson, do you?
Have you submitted our reentry plan to Navajo Nation's Department of Education?
Christie?
So,
I'll have Christie speak.
we have our readiness walkthroughs, our readiness teams going through on Thursday, and as soon as we have those completed, then we'll submit the entire plan. What's changed, on June 18th, they changed some of, the guidelines, so gating measures in particular, before they were looking at whatever the color was an occupancy limit, that's now been changed. So there will be some minor revisions, but most of it looks pretty similar to what it was when we brought you plan back in April to give us the initial guidelines. So all of that will be, but what you approved in April, as well as the readiness assessments with the sign-offs from those teams for each school, will all be submitted to Navajo Nation. They've asked that it be submitted by the end of June, so that's why we're going through this week. So we'll have that definitely done by then.
I wonder if other schools have done the same thing. Do you know?
Yeah, so NAVA, the Office of Today Education, has requested that all schools on the Navajo Nation submit that plan by June 30, including those readiness walkthroughs. So they've requested all of the schools to do that, whether they're BIE, public schools, community schools.
And the reason I'm asking is if Navajo Nation could get enough of these type of submittal from different schools and all schools to maybe Navajo Nation can quickly act on it. I hate for us to wait out all the way into August, a week or two before school start, and then we finally get an okay or everything's lifted. I would try to get this done soon before school start. So that's why I'm just wondering if Navajo Nation's doing it.
One thing that they are throwing around a little bit, and talking a little bit about that I want to watch very carefully is student testing. They are discussing the possibilities of student testing. And so, once I see where that falls, I'll definitely bring that back to the board to make sure you're aware of any recommendation they have. I think that may be one of the more sensitive areas of any type of a reentry plan. Should they encourage mandatory or strongly encourage any kind of testing that is beyond optional or whatever? I just would want to make sure you're aware of what's in the recommendations. But at this point, they're just discussing it, and I've just seen that been very interested in those discussions.
Any other questions? And I've heard from some families that, their kids are not gonna be back in school.
Can you just a little louder to make sure we get you on the recording? Your voice just a little louder. I can hardly hear you.
I've heard from families that, if the Navajo Nation's not going with the back to school thing, that they're gonna relocate and put their kids in different schools. So that is.
Okay, so you're saying that there are families who just want their kids to go back to school, so they're going to.
Well, if you remember the survey we put out towards the end of school year, it was, what was that, about 3 to 4 weeks, a month or so before the end of school? That was a district-wide survey. We sent it out in the river region, and we ended up with about 55 to 60% of our parents wanted their students back in school, but it was about 45 that did not, so it was fairly close. They wanted still to be virtual. So yes, there's definitely a percentage of our parents that I think, as Lucille said, will be very discouraged should they not have an option of in-person education. So I think that's a very fair comment.
Okay.
Is Navajo Nation aware of our survey?
Yeah, they are. And they even did their own survey, and I found that very interesting because with our last conference call that I weighed in on, which was about 3 weeks ago, they discussed it. They had just over 1,000 responses for the entire Navajo Nation, which I found when we did our COVID survey last summer, we had almost 1,200 or 1,300 responses within a week just in our district, which I had never seen those type of responses. It was definitely a very, our stakeholders were very interested in and wanted to be heard. But 1,000 throughout the entire Navajo Nation, I felt like was pretty poor return. But yeah, they even did their own survey as well. But they do know about our survey too. We did inform them.
And that is a requirement of the reentry plan that we submit
It sounds to me like now the nation's Department of Education and elected board members probably need to do a better job of encouraging parents, public to do those surveys to see if they want their kids back in school in person.
Okay, so can we do all 9, 10, and 11 in the next 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very possible.
All time.
Because number 9 is just, number 9 is, we've already approved the Native American Policies and Procedures Manual in January, and it's required to be approved January. I put it only on there only as kind of a reference point and a reminder of why we actually have agreed to do 10 and 11. Why do we look at student data? Why do we look at the questions that are submitted? We commit in our Native American Policies and Procedures Manual, which is required by our Impact Aid application, that we will monitor participation of all students focused on our Native American students to make sure we are seeing access and equal access, equity and access to our programs, not just curriculum, but all activities and programs. So that's why we do have some numbers in front of you, and on number 10, you have a spreadsheet that will break down some of the participation in our schools for Native students and non-Native students. And really, it's kind of interesting. The dynamics of our district are interesting, where if you look at Monument Valley or high school or Whitehorse High School, and 99% of their students are Native American, you're going to see 99% or 100% of the students participating are Native American. If you go to Monticello, where there's a very small portion of Native American, it's going to make sense that it's a very small portion. That puts most of the general focus in the Blanding area, in San Juan High and Albert R. Lyman, because that's where you do see a pretty even split, 45 to 55-ish split there between Native and non-Native students. So if we're going to evaluate, are our Native students participating and are they finding access to these activities, then I think that's the places we're going to look. And so I just make that note. And you could, anything that wants to come out of that data, it doesn't say exactly what we do with that data, but I think the idea behind it is that we have a discussion if we see disparity, that we try to address it and actively find solutions, and we go from there. It's tricky. In many of the sports are different than other sports. You'll see some sports and some activities where it seems like the balance is very appropriate, and in some areas it's not. It's a little more concerning. So I do know that it's an area of trying to encourage all kids at these schools to participate. But anyway, that's why that's on there. Number 11 is a little bit tricky. This year alone, we're kind of on an outlier year. You're not seeing any questions in front of you. And that's due to the fact that we've always had these tablets in our schools and in our chapter house visits. And so you've usually seen about 20 to 30 questions that have been generated throughout a year as we've made those visits. Well, this last year, due to COVID, we didn't have any students in schools in our river region, and we didn't make any chapter house visits in person. The chapter meetings were all virtual. So this process did not play out very effectively. We did not gather any questions. So I think it's just going to have to be a focus that we make this year. But, we did have a lot of questions on COVID, even in our board meetings, and we addressed those directly when they came forward. But this is kind of an outlier year with COVID that you don't see any questions. I think you'll see that change again this following year. So that's 9, 10, and 11, and if you have any questions or concerns, I'll try to address them.
Did you have questions?
And that's quicker than 9 minutes.
Wow. Boy, that was like 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
And some people call me wordy.
If you're on the timer, you're pretty good. All right, now we're going to go into reports. So, Miss Anna, come on up.
Come up.
Oh, yes.
Is this good?
No, bring that chair right up here.
Oh.
Yeah, come on up. We'd like to see you.
You can hear me from clear back there.
It's hard.
Trust me. They will have no trouble hearing me on the microphone.
All right.
All right, you have my paperwork. The first thing I'll tell you is I made a mistake right off the bat. When I looked at it before I came in here, I thought, that's not right. Our actual meal total for the year is $471,039.
Oh.
So it's way different. I don't know where that number came from.
471.
471,000, yes, is how many meals we served this year. We feel like we had a pretty good year. Our counts were down, obviously, in a lot of our southern schools. In the river region, we had people picking up regularly in a lot of places, and some people would just drop out over time, didn't want to keep getting up and coming out there early, whatever the reasons would be. So we did serve less students than we would like to have, but we did serve, we feel like, the people who really needed to come out and get it, I guess.
Questions?
So I get, everybody who wanted it
Was able to get
was,
it.
and they had breakfast and lunch.
Yes.
If they,
We sent them together in the river region. We did not, one of our big things was we did not want to do sack lunches like we had done in the stressful 10 weeks of spring 2020. We did not want to do that, so we served our regular menu for the most part. Our kitchens would make it on one day, they would package it individually on a second day, we would send it out on the third day. And then people would just reheat it at home, and they would have a hot meal. But it wasn't sandwiches, it was what we normally serve at school. So. And they handled that really well. I gotta give it to our kitchens. They were rock stars, they did a great job.
You mentioned a survey that you had secondary staff and students do. I was curious, what were one or some things that you learned from?
We asked about 20 questions, I think. I mean, we wanted to know, what are your favorite meals? What do you hate? We took the things that they really did not like. There was some clear items that they didn't care for. We took them out of the menu. So we will not serve those. We found some things that we suggested some things we had looked at and some ideas that I had for lunch, and they liked some of them, so we added those. We doubled up the thing they liked the best, which shockingly was meaty nachos.
I was thinking cinnamon rolls.
That's
like,
their favorite,
about
meaty
everything.
nachos. So we doubled that up in our schedule. We run a 6-week meal schedule. But we did take out some things they didn't like. Mac and cheese. They, for some reason, don't like mac and cheese. I don't know why. I think we took out the sloppy joe in the high school. We didn't make changes in our elementary school. A lot of the things we added are kind of more older. I don't know, like the KFC bowl. You've gone to KFC, which would be just a hassle in an elementary school, but in a high school it makes sense. So we added some things for that. We also had lots of comments about things that, when we asked open-ended questions like, what would you change? What do you not like? We had a lot of things that we couldn't change. Salad bars obviously went away with COVID. Nothing we could do about that. They'll probably come back as soon as we can bring them back. Salt, we can't add that. So that's not going to be something we can bring for them. Longer lunches, which I think we've kind of addressed a little bit and tried to make our lunch a little longer. That was one of their things. A lot of our kids commented that they would like to eat outside on nice days. So that's something we'll pass along to principals. If they can make that work, awesome. About half our kids said they eat most of the time. So that was, of the ones that replied, they eat most of the time. And a lot of them said that when we do the second chance breakfast this year, that they will take advantage of that. And in high schools, our breakfast counts are really low in general. You've had a high school kid, you know.
Tell me your second chance.
So second chance breakfast, it's
Like
one of our
later?
goals on our goal list. You'll see House Bill 222 basically establishes that all schools who receive funding through National School Lunch are required to serve breakfast, which we already do. But they also made it a law that if you have 70% or higher free and reduced lunches, you have to serve a second chance breakfast. We already do that in our elementary schools. If you bring a kid to school late who has not had breakfast, we take them to the cafeteria and feed them. But in high schools, we don't, and we're required now by law to do that. We have to the end of the year to implement it. We'll probably run some tests in a few high schools here and there to see what works and what doesn't before we fully implement the idea. But between first and second period is most of the time where people are doing it. They're offering a grab-and-go breakfast out in the lobby. Kids grab it, they take it with them in second period and eat it in second period. So that's kind of what a lot of schools have done and the direction they're taking it. But it is required by state law now, so. That's 70% or higher for next year. The year after that, it's 50% or higher are required, free and reduced lunches are required to offer that. And the following year is 30% or higher. So every one of our schools will fall in that category within the 3-year period, so we're gonna go ahead and implement it everywhere.
That's a general question.
Yeah, I have a couple here on your challenges. First one is bullet second, food service is the lowest tier on the pay scale. So what is it that you need or should we?
Food service is the only one still at an 8, besides bus aides. Everyone else is a 9 or higher. Food service is the only one left at an 8. So, I mean, it would be great if we could bump food service to that. For a lot of our employees, it probably wouldn't make a big difference because they're probably already all maxed out. For getting new employees, it would make a difference for us, I think. We lose a lot of our employees, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but we do lose the ones that we lose to other district jobs a lot. They get another deal for being a para for a better rate, so they leave. We have struggled to get, I know everyone struggles to get subs, but we struggle to get them, and we get feedback from them a lot that our pay is lower than other subs, and I don't know if that's true or not, but so they don't want to work in the kitchen. It's hard to work in the kitchen. So it would definitely be helpful to our department to move us up. And I hope that this year with the raise and that being higher, that will help when we're looking for employees. But typically when we have a job open, it takes us a long time to find anybody to apply.
It's good to hear whether true or not that it's said.
Yeah.
So someone hopefully could look into it. The other one is the outdated equipment.
Yeah, we do have some equipment that is old, and we've put some of that in the budget, I think, for replacement, specifically Montezuma Creek Elementary is where we'll be adding some things. We have written grants through the equipment grant funding through the state for refrigerated milk crates in Whitehorse, Montezuma Creek, San Juan High, and Monument Valley High. Everyone else already has one. Those are the 4 schools who don't have one, so we've written that. We're just waiting to hear back if we've received that. And then Tom and I are kind of going to go through together. I've gotten a list of everybody's equipment in their school. We're going to go through and kind of make a priority list so we can start replacing things as they need. We're doing an outdated serving line at San Juan High this summer. We're doing the Whitehorse High School serving line. But those serving lines are very expensive. We have a couple that are going to start needing to be replaced soon, a couple others.
Okay, good. Well, I hope you get those grants approved.
So do I.
Get those. Thank you.
Anything else?
On here it says keeping kids at school for lunch is always a challenge.
Always.
Who wants at the door?
Well, and in elementary schools and at ARL, they're closed campus, so they're ours. They can't leave us. But high school kids, we do struggle to keep them in the building. So we're hoping that some of the things that came from the survey, we're going to try some of the things they've asked for, and hopefully those will work. We're going to ask the principals if they can find a location and allow them to take their food and go outside. Sometimes I think they just want to go outside. And I watch kids all day long out my window there at San Juan High that just come sit on the lawn. They just want to go outside for a minute.
We spend a lot of money maintaining this lawn. Every time I drive by it, home to work, I look at lawn that isn't used for anything, so it would be really nice if students could go out and sit under, the trees are getting bigger out here, and if we can utilize that lawn and they can get out of the building, I think that would be ideal. At any of our schools where they want to leave the building and just get
We'll
some fresh
We'll
air.
suggest that to our principals. So if they can figure out a way to keep them clean, I think that's usually the challenge, is making high school kids clean up after themselves so that the custodian doesn't have to go out and clean up 10,000 napkins or
Yeah,
everything
security
else.
cameras,
Mhm.
say, you know what? You're-
And we're hoping that by adding some of the things they've asked us to add and taking away some of the things they don't want, that it'll help keep them and encourage them to come and eat.
where it's free for every student, you would think there would be some kind of leverage. Parents could say, you know what? I'm going to help pay for your this and this and this, and you're eating lunch at school. But I know teenagers are teenagers. They don't always appreciate that the food's already there, it's already paid for by a source, and by their, it's not really free, but anyway.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate what you do, and the thing that I find really interesting is all your challenges, like you're 2 steps ahead. You already figured out what your solutions are gonna be, and that's really nice.
We know what our problems are now.
Yeah, I mean, everything we asked you, you already said,
Yeah,
okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and this, which is great, because the fact the questions I had that were asked, like what were you gonna do about this, you already had a plan, so we appreciate what you do, and that's all.
Thank you. We should be, start seeing people receive their PEBT funding. That's been a big question from parents lately. We've been getting a lot of calls. So they should start getting those calls. The state is distributing that through Department of Workforce Services. They told us they were sending them last week. No one's seen them yet that I've contacted or has contacted me. So we're still waiting to see those. And we're hoping that our families get that funding soon. So.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Good work.
All right. Mr. Murrah, we should have just kept you up here, right? How many months have you been doing this now?
This is a full 6 months.
Full 6 months.
Yes.
He's doing a great job.
Do you feel still overwhelmed?
Oh yeah, every day, right? But it's good.
It's a whole new,
That's okay.
a whole new thing.
Yeah.
All right. Mary, did you have any questions?
Not yet. Give me a
All right.
minute.
Lisa?
I did want to mention, not to be a negative Nelly, but I did want to mention one challenge that I forgot to put on here that's actually really huge. It's attracting highly qualified SPED teachers to our region, and also at some point para-educators to work with our students on a daily basis. So that's probably the biggest challenge. The other ones where I was like, I need to get those out there, but I forgot to put the biggest one on there. So
That actually was my question. So
yeah.
what's your ideas for solutions?
Okay, so we do offer a $2,500 signing bonus. I am reaching out to universities to see if by chance there are any interns who would be interested in coming down and working with us. We still have 3 full-time positions open, one at San Juan High, one shared at Montezuma Creek and Whitehorse High School, and then one at Bluff Elementary. And so we have those 3 that are still left open. We have hired an intern to fill a Monticello High School and elementary position, which I think will work well. But we're trying to be creative all the time. There is also a grow your own where potentially a paraeducator could become a SPED teacher, so we're looking into that as well. But that's just one of those things. We do have teachers in our district who are special educators, but are choosing not to teach special education because it is challenging. So maybe working to convince some of them to join our ranks could help as well.
Is it lack of individuals going into that field, or is it lack of, I mean, why are they not coming here? Is it the
Well,
pay? Is it the?
I mean, when you look at the rules that govern special education, like that's a lot to bring on.
Because like we don't even understand your documents, to be honest.
Well, I'm learning them, right?
Right.
And so, like, there is a lot. A special education teacher will work harder at doing paperwork, managing case files, making sure that services are provided that they don't provide. Like if somebody has speech or meets with the school psychologist or with our OT or PT, that's an organization that SPED teacher really does implement. And our itinerant team here works with the SPED teachers very closely to make sure that happens, but it is still a lot on their plate. They're also writing IEPs every year, and triennials are big. When you get new testing in, you have to rewrite goals and focuses for those students and those things. So it is a big job.
Matt wants to have here.
Just jumping in on that, it is not a unique problem to San Juan School District.
Absolutely.
It is definitely statewide.
It is.
We are addressing it through alternative pathways. There's a new addition to the Apple program called Apple S, which is what we're utilizing in Monticello. And really, at times like this, with a limited number of special education teachers looking for employment, it's a buyer's market, and we're definitely not as competitive as some other districts.
So are we retaining them?
We did
Because I feel
lose-
like we have quite a bit of turnaround lately.
Yeah,
with
we
them.
only lost 2 this year.
Only 2.
I know, but when you look at that,
But yeah.
in perspective, we only lost 2. And so I think that we are working to retain. I try to be very nice, so that's one thing that can help. And
Well, by nature, that's not very helpful, let me just.
Huh.
It's a big issue. I know that there may be some people out there, some teachers out there who might be willing to get their certification. I think it's just a matter of making options available if possible and encouraging that to happen.
So do you feel that those special ed teachers have enough paras besides the support? Well, I mean, there's a ton of paperwork that goes with that
So,
job.
No,
What does
I
that
don't,
mean?
I'm looking at the money people, right? Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like, we could use more, but I think we have to be realistic in, could we find enough to fulfill every position that we had? I don't know. And secondly, I think the paras that we do have and the teachers that we do have are rock stars. And so they're working very hard every day to make great things happen for our most at-risk students. So,
So I love the idea of growing our own, anywhere from students who are in high school right now. And if you look around, and of course I know Blanding better than I know the other communities, but each of you know communities. If you look around, you'll see families, full big families, that almost all of their children have come back home to live. And you'll see a few grandparents who are sitting here in Blanding or in Monticello, Montezuma Creek, wherever you want, and they don't have any of their kids live here, and some in between. There are families that really, really want, every one of them want to live back home wherever they live in San Juan County. And providing the opportunity and the information about going into education in general, but being able to always have a position available, almost always. You go into, there was somebody here who ended up in Blanding, wanted to go into history and work here in particularly in Blanding. And I told her at the time, you can go into history and you may just hit it just right when you graduate. There might be a job opening right here in Blanding, but there may not. There might not be a job for a very long time. But if you go into a different field where they're often open, you can be more guaranteed a job. And that kind of stuff, people, they don't know that unless we share that information. Special education is a field where you can almost go to work anywhere you want. As Matt said, it's not unique to San Juan School District.
Right.
So if they want to go somewhere else, they could. But we have those job openings and people don't know this information.
yeah.
They really don't. So if we can start sharing that information, if coming back home is something that you want to do and you want a career that you're pretty sure you can come back and that you can live here if you want to, that's a really good bet that there's going to be an opening in the community you want to live in San Juan School District.
I think that's great. One of our daughters wants to be a teacher. And I said, make sure you get your special ed endorsement because you'll get a job anywhere.
Yeah, and I know a guy who, in fact, we had a little interim contract with, I guess, an agreement that he was going to go to Monticello, but he kept trying to get a job for several years. He finally got his special ed endorsement. He was offered a job in Monticello, but before he actually went to work, he got a job in his hometown and didn't go to work for us. But he figured out if he wanted to go to work wherever he wanted to, he needed to get a special ed endorsement, because he was English, I think, and he couldn't. So anyway, I think we're putting a lot of effort into that to get people who want to live here.
Did you, Matt, have something?
No, we, in our efforts from my end, we are trying to educate. And when we have, whether it be high school students, paraeducators, community members coming in with these questions, we're often saying, you know, it's fantastic that you would like to be a PE teacher or you would like to be a history teacher, but you know what would be beneficial is attach a reading endorsement to it or attach this endorsement to it or look. And we're working that avenue.
Absolutely. And I felt that support. I want everybody to know I felt that support. It's not like I'm an island in this, so.
Lucille, did you have any questions? Did you just?
Yeah, I'm going to display my ignorance here.
Okay.
I looked at your title for your over the special education programs and assessment.
Yes.
And I noticed you had the ACT results in there.
So,
And I assumed that it was special programs and assessment of special education. But does assessment not apply to special education?
assessment is separate. That is all state and district level assessments that I'm managing as well. So that does include the ACT, Utah Aspire Plus, RISE, the KEEP and PEEP in our lower grade levels. Julie is involving me and Christy are involving me more in the Acadian, so like our DIBELS testing. So yes, so assessment is a separate piece. And the only reason I included ACT is because that's the only assessment that we took district-wide this year. So out of 220 11th graders, we had 204 take it. So that's why I included that.
Nelson, do you have any questions?
Just one question. I don't know, for whatever reasons, I just like the challenges, I guess, to see what one has to do to overcome that challenge. Here, you say we need to work to exit more students from IEPs. We meaning your department?
Yeah, we as a district special education department, so all of our teachers, everybody that we're working to help students meet their goals and then exit out. I've attended several exit meetings, and those are great when you can say to a parent, the student, we provided the tools necessary, they are where they need to be, they can be successful on their own. Sometimes parents are very nervous to hear that, and sometimes parents are super excited to hear that. And so we do have 504s that we can put in place as kind of like a gradual release. But I do think that we are hanging on to too many special education students for too long. I think that the goal of special education is to work ourselves out of a job. And so we want to be exiting students. We'll always have new ones come in, but we want to be exiting more students if possible, as soon as possible.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, and
Yeah, you're welcome.
you know, tough job. Sorry, but hopefully, I mean, you know, if you come up with some ideas, solutions, bring it back to the board. Let us know.
Absolutely. I really appreciate your support and faith in me. This is a big change, but I've really enjoyed it actually. It's been a lot of fun. It's easy to miss the middle school. It's easy to miss the staff that we have there, but it has been a really fun challenge and good change. So.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, we'll go back up to number 12 on our AB discussion. Superintendent.
Yes, let's have a little fun. So, this is
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, I'll try to move quickly then. I saved a couple from the last topic.
Well, they do not roll over.
They do not roll over, okay. No, this has been a topic that's got a lot of attention and a lot of discussion. And we've tried, I think, to break this down and look at it from all ways. What you do have before you, there's another attempt to get stakeholder input and to let our stakeholders speak out. As I've tried to pull this apart, we had a meeting, we really looked at it, tried to really drill into it. And in my opinion, it's fairly similar to what we got when we had in-person meetings and met with parents and met with staff. We've got people a little bit all over the place. There is some, when we get into individual communities, there is some consistency. You can see the number of parents that took this survey was 337 parent responses, 87 staff. And then if you break it down into communities, you can see that probably 2/3 of the responses did come from the Blanding area. 233 of the 337 did come from the 3 Blanding schools, so that's probably 2/3 of it. But and once you break it, if you drill into the community areas, what you have before there is each question is ranked by how it came out as a priority. So if you were to go to slide the one that is just following, I wish these were numbered.
Yeah, I could not figure that out, so I'm,
I had to look at that pretty
Displaying
carefully
my-
too. If you go to the first one that says parent secondary ranking responses, it's the first one that gets kind of like a bunch of graphs. So if you go a little further, no,
Which
one more.
document are you looking at,
One
Superintendent?
more.
The
Right there,
last
that
one
one.
that's listed.
Parent secondary ranking responses is just right after, as we
Yeah.
enter in.
that.
Yeah, that one. What you're looking at is each item that was to be ranked, you can see how it breaks down. So if you look at it as a whole, the one that's blue is by far the highest number one priority. That is leave the start time unchanged from its present time. And if you drill down into the communities, which we're not gonna have time to do in 10 minutes, but it's on here, you can
Well,
certainly
let's
look
be
at it.
thorough.
Yeah, you can certainly look at it. Blanding is very strong in that category, and if you drill into Montezuma Creek and Miami Valley, that is not their highest priority, but when 2/3 of the responses come from one community, and you put it all together, that's what you're gonna see. So it is definitely that way from there. And then you can see the second highest priority is have the same number of class periods before lunch as after, but that's also very close to have more class, or have as many class periods before lunch as possible. Both of those are within 10 people responding, the first two right there for the second priority. So anyway, what we hoped we'd learn from this is some priorities and then drill into the different communities, which is what we have done and what we can look at. And there's no question in my mind, if you were to say, drill into our river region communities, they want to see the day start later. And so that if we're talking about how the start of the day is, they'd like to see it as late as possible, as close to 9 as possible. If you look at the Blanding community, they'd like to think unchanged. And in most cases, that's 8 o'clock, because that's what is unchanged is at. Monticello's probably leaning that way as well, with unchanged as far as parents. Staff are a little bit different. I'm getting reports from a principal in Blanding that his staff is evolving a little bit away from that to a different position. But anyway, as I try to, and I again want to emphasize this whole issue has really been brought forward out of an attempt to provide a schedule that is more conducive to providing interventions and extensions and providing teacher collaboration and providing more time in a meaningful way for instruction to go deeper. That's what's driving this, and it came from the school level. So I'm trying to navigate this process once it took off in a way that can please as many people as possible, knowing it's 100% clear to me I can't please everybody. Just can't. And if we weren't connected by a secondary schedule, it would probably be easier to please more people. I'm not recommending that. I think in the long term, that is not the best way for the district to go, because we lose something that has benefited us substantially, and that's the ability to broadcast classes and to meet the needs in isolated locations and other locations in a way that we could not if we weren't on the same schedule. So I'm not recommending that, but we do that in the elementary where we don't broadcast classes. And elementary schedules, unbeknownst to the board, have tweaked their schedules for years, and it's just never even been really that big of an issue, whether they're at 8 or 5 or whatever. I've seen schools change that. With all of that said, and with this data that I think again is saying pretty much what I knew going in, not that I was trying to guess, but it was pretty obvious when I met with parents and met with people, I am going to make a recommendation and put it to the board's level is really all I can do. And if you were to go back to my first, are you controlling this, Matt? Can you go back to the first attachment under this item agenda?
Can I ask a question while he's going back? I don't see anywhere on here. I mean, one of the things I've heard most throughout quite a few years from parents is they hate a different start time.
Oh, that was the first question.
Tuesday.
You mean in between the schools?
No, Tuesday.
Oh, no, that is
And
not.
that's not, that was never an option, and parents have wanted, it's not that they hate starting at, well, some of them do, but 8:40 or 8:25. It's not that they even hate that, they hate that it's different than Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because we all
Yeah.
mess it up.
Click on that first one. I'm gonna bring slide down slightly to that bottom schedule. I'm gonna make a recommendation that if I am deciding this, and one recommendation I bring before the board is we need to let schools know. One of the other things I'm hearing at the school level strongly is it's time that we know what our bell schedule is. We've got to start locking things in. We've got to print it in handbooks. We've got to work with our parents. There's a lot of things that they're like, it's time. So anyway, the time I think is now to make a decision. I am recommending this schedule right here for the entire secondary schools of our district. That would include the 5 high schools and now our Lyman. This would be an 8:25 start. Now, it is not exactly the schedule all the way around. I need to be very clear. The starting time would be consistent. We would stay very consistent in the times, but we need to recognize that there's a school or two that have to have a double lunch. So they've always had to have a little flexibility to tweak some things. And we've always had a period or two that we couldn't broadcast in because we've had to be flexible to meet some of the individual needs of a double lunch or things like that. And that would still be needed.
ARL and
Montezuma, Whitehorse does a double lunch as well. So there's been 2 of them that have felt that they really need a double lunch to be effective. So there's a few tweaks that would happen there, but the point that, the thing that I think is really needs to get set so that some of the smaller individual decisions can be made is when are we starting and how's this going to look? And I am recommending we start at 8:25. I am recommending that this would allow elementary schools to decide their start time still. If they chose to stay at the regular time, which was the highest priority in Blanding and Monticello, in the elementary area, they could do that. Blanding Elementary could stay at a set time. They would not have the same start time, but I think there's things that could be worked out there as well. But Blanding Elementary could choose to start a little later. They could choose to stay at the same time. That would be a school-based decision, just as it always has been. I think Montezuma Creek and TES will probably elect to move their starting time back a little bit. That's what both their staff and their parents have weighed in on. So if their high school is starting at 8:25, I think you'll see those elementary schools in the river region start a little later as well, by their choice. Not by mandate, but by their choice. Monticello Elementary will probably, they have their choice, but I would assume they'll stay at 8:15. They've been at 8:15 for a long time, and it would not require them to change. The school that I think we would watch the most closely to see, how definitely there could be some challenges. Albert R. Lyman would have the youngest kids that would require the most time of supervision in the morning. So we would watch that, and we might even need to provide some support to them to really look at that. We would adjust buses back anywhere that we could. If we can adjust a bus back 10 or 15 minutes and still allow time for breakfast, but if they come a little later, that would make sense so that they're not there so early. Parents that are working could still drop their kids off 7:40, 7:45-ish, which is when we've always welcomed them into our school. We actually get some at 7:15, and I'll tell you, even if we weren't talking about schedule, we've discouraged that in the past. We've probably had no choice but to allow it, but we do sometimes get kids as early as 7:15 in our schools. We really are not set up to supervise that, or never have been. But
if I understand right, none of them are allowed inside the school, is that right? Well, I guess,
Well,
what time are they allowed into
I
the
couldn't answer that because it's kind of it's a school by school thing, and it's even a weather thing. Sometimes if the weather's bad, they'll do this, and if the weather's good, they'll do this. So I would just have to gather that information exactly how each school is handling that. And I know, being a principal in Monticello, how I handled it, but that was a long time ago. It's not relevant. But anyway, that would, elementary schools still would be able to look at that and decide where they wanted to go. But I think there would be some adjustment early. I believe wholeheartedly that we would then be able to make adjustments and make sure that we are able to do this successfully. This would also open up a window where we could look at that we would not mandate that Tuesday morning have to be a late start. These elementary Secondary would not be a late start. They're building their collaboration time in the morning before. And elementary schools could present a plan to me of how they will do their collaboration time, which would mean we probably would move away from across the district late start. It would not. I'm recommending that under this change, that would no longer, we would no longer be in that need of that. We'd still want collaboration time somewhere, but they would submit a plan of how they will ensure their PLCs are meeting. Secondary, we know. Elementaries would have to discuss it.
Any questions?
So that might help with those parents that do not like the one day that's different. That would align the days.
Questions, Lucille?
So, yeah, so let's say this, that this is approved, your recommendation is approved, and then in Blanding where we've got 3 schools, I guess this includes 2 of those schools, but in any of our communities where elementary can just be an island, then I don't think it's fair to parents that have kids in 3 schools or two schools to be like, okay, I've got to get my kid to Blanding Elementary at 8 o'clock, but the other kids don't have to be there until 8:25, and it's the 8:25 high school student who drops off the elementary kids, or maybe they don't yet, maybe they don't drive, or they don't drive at all, they're a senior and they don't drive and there's not an extra car to do those things. But I think that complicates it. If the elementary schools are an island, they can do whatever they want and not take into consideration, and everybody doesn't get what they want. We know that in education, You can't give every parent what they want, you can't give every teacher what they want. I mean, it just doesn't work. But I think there needs to be a cohesive, I think it works okay to have schools offset by 10 minutes, but more than 10 minutes, I think is really problematic for parents. And so changing one thing, then, if parents fill out a survey and they say, this is what's the most important to me, but then they don't get that, there's almost a second survey that this is what's going to happen. So based on this, then what helps you most as parents to support your kids in education, to have your kids to school on time, to have your kids ready for us at school. I think it's the reason we care is because we want to accommodate generally, and again, because everybody doesn't get what they want, we want to accommodate them generally so that it is more simple than more complicated for them to have their kids to school on time. So,
Obviously, your recommendation comes from staff involvement heavily.
Definitely. And I say stakeholder involvement, although I will say we're not pleasing everybody.
Right.
I don't pretend to say I wish you could just reach out and find everyone was aligned and wow, that made it look easy, but we, community-wise, even throughout the district, we're looking at this differently, and it's just what it is, so.
Well, there'll be some
I will say this, I've looked at a couple other districts that have posted new schedules. Twilla was the one that I saw just 2 nights ago that posted their new schedules. I don't think having all schools start secondary and elementary is very common. I have not polled all 40 of them, so I can't say with definity that I know that, definitely that I know that, but I have seen a few just recently, and they do not have a matching starting time. They start their starting their schools at different times, because they base it on, there's a different, high school kids may need to start a little later than elementary kids. And anyway, so just be aware that I think there's logic for that one way, and there's logic for it another way, but it's just what it is.
no, based on the,
Have any questions?
No.
Okay. All right.
I just have a question about why the recommendation, after getting the surveys back, why the recommendation is where it's at specifically.
Because I think, in my mind, it pleases, it tries to hit as many of the boxes in pleasing people as possible. It's, first of all, the very first box is, there was a really strong drive by our schools that have moved the furthest along in the area of meeting and really tracking individual student needs. And I'm giving my own opinion of that. Those schools that I believe have really invested in tracking students' academic needs and trying to meet them, that they came forth and started this process with the first box and said, our schedule is not conducive. It really could be better at helping our students learn and helping us individually meet their needs. That's what started this. And that spoke loudly to me because that's what this work's about, and getting things in support to raise student learning and to better support all of our learners. So that started it, and they needed more collaboration and time for intervention extensions, more teacher collaboration, and they needed time to go deeper into the concepts. Those were all explained. So that box is checked. Then as we get into and we start to see, well, some of the communities want to see a later start. Well, in the secondary area, that box is checked. Some of them in the Blanding Monticello want to see schools start at the same time. In the elementary area, I think we could check that box. We are losing it in the Blanding area with ARL and San Juan High. However, I will tell you that in one of those two schools, I'm getting feedback just as recently as last week that a strong principal recommendation was to go to 825. So there is some movement in some of the staff levels of the Blanding schools. But anyway, I know we're not, the parents that feel like they'd like those schools to line up in this community, we're not checking that box.
Well, they didn't even have that option. They just said they wanted the start time to stay.
Yeah, stay the same, but that kind of that lets you know where they're at. That gathers the information. I know that they'd like to see that. And if I could check that box, I would, but if you check that box, you lose an entire region that is asking versus a community. Anyway, it's just a challenge. That's where I think the best fit, in my opinion.
Well, and this will be an action item, so we can vote on it.
Yeah.
So, okay, 13, demolition of the house.
Okay, we didn't do that. I'm bringing this before you as well. Tyrell's been involved in this. We've looked at it. We've spoken with the maintenance department. As many as 5 or 6, 7 years ago, the district purchased this house that sits just west of Blanding Elementary. You have some pictures of it, so if you're familiar with Blanding, you're probably making a connection. It's sitting vacant. It has been now for at least 3 years that I'm aware of. So it's basically just sitting there and day by day, going the way of no maintenance and no real care. And so the teachers have kind of adopted it on that side of the school for a parking lot. If you go there during the school day, you'll see a lot of cars just angled up in and darted up in because it's become a makeshift parking lot. There is a need for more parking at Blanding Elementary. And I think it's more convenient to have a little parking on that west side of the building. So I am just bringing this forth again as more of an information item. I do know the maintenance department would like to tackle this house and remove it and turn it into some type of a parking lot. It's my opinion that once we remove it and we put, even if the bid that you see, there is a bid that's attached there because that was done a few months ago, quite a few months ago now.
Is there an RFP put out for this?
No, we'd have to do that and everything. It's just an informational. I don't know. That bid was actually done by our former BA, and it just was quite a few months ago. So that gives you a time frame. So I just think it gives you an estimate of what we might be looking at. Could cost more today. And I believe once the house is removed and people start parking there, parking in gravel sure sounds convenient when that's better than what you have, but once you get it and you might get a little muddy and you might this on bad days, I think they'll be pushed to make it an official parking lot before long. But that's a need, so it's not a bad thing. But I guess what I'm doing is I'm bringing this before the board saying I would like to propose that we build this into some capital projects and we demolish that home and we move forward and we build it into a parking lot and make it a viable piece of resource to fill a need at Blanding Elementary, and we take steps to move forward on it. It's just kind of been hanging there.
Questions?
No, I wish I had at this point a master plan of what a remodel or a new elementary school looks like. If we're gonna need that land for that.
Yeah.
Before we start developing it too much, but.
Totally agree. We had that very discussion just earlier today that, I know if we knew exactly where the future lied and Tyrell's on board and I talked with him about this, that these are the things we've got to get to, of having some vision of where that can all go. But I do think that's a very lengthy process to work through of how we're going to move forward with. When we left our building projects, Blanding Elementary is the next one on there unless the board makes a decision to go a different way. But that is the next building that was on a building list that was adopted many years ago. But we don't really have any specific plans.
But at least we could demo it, then just work on where we're headed.
Yeah, I think a
Should
parking
probably
lot,
get rid of that, right?
The land is growing. We demo this house and the land will.
There you go, Lisa, anything?
So by the looks of the roof hole, I'm guessing the building is water damage too, so.
probably so. There's been nobody, I've never been inside this building, in this house, just driven by.
Okay. All right, no more first, okay, let's go to our water needs with Whitehorse High School.
Yes, again, this is a situation I've brought to the board at least once, maybe twice, and just want to keep the board abreast. You know, we have the issue where water and having sufficient water for our football field and our practice field at Whitehorse has become an issue. We used to always get adequate water from Elk Petroleum, and then before Elk Petroleum, they were, everybody remembers, jumped out of my head. But anyway, for years back, what's that? Yeah, Resolute, thank you. They were Resolute for that, and we've always had that water. And it's not that water has reduced. From what I understand, the need for water, the usage of water as the oil field, the life of the oil field goes down, you're now removing oil deeper in from the ground than you were, requires more water. So, and actually there's water rights that they have enough water, we don't have enough water storing capacity. We need to put it in a tank and then we can use it as will. But if we need to wait for the pumps to generate all the water, we can use it faster than the infrastructure can supply it out of the river. So we're looking at that. You have attached there some recommendations. We've met again with Elk Petroleum. They do have some recommendations of how we can move forward, and we're going to explore those a little more closely. We also, as I reported last time, have been encouraged that we do think we can purchase or lease water rights from the San Juan Water Conservancy. And again, if we can utilize one of these recommendations, we then can utilize Elk Petroleum's infrastructure to get the water up to a hill, which would gravity feed back down to our fields and let us use it. It very easily, it's going to cost some money. It's another thing that's going to cost some money. We're looking at least $60,000 to $70,000 to get a new pump and to get some things placed. If we go as far as to put a new tank, that we have our own tank up on the hill, which we explored that possibility, that would be additional. And then we're not sure what the cost of the water might be. We haven't zeroed in on that. And the Water Conservancy meets quarterly, so we're not sure when their next meeting is. They haven't set that as far as I know. I'm waiting for a word on that.
Yeah. The last one was May?
Yeah, I met in that one, so it could be still a little bit. So we'll go back and we'll try to zero in on exactly that cost. But again, I don't know, I think this has to be a priority. I'm recommending it as a priority and making the board aware, because we have to provide, you know, a playable football field. Otherwise, there's just so many issues that come in, and safety being at the top of them for our students to play on a rock concrete field. It's not safe, so.
Well, so with these recommendations, they're a little deep. What are you both recommending? Options.
I'm recommending either one or two, but I want to go a little deeper in it myself. So I'm looking at, there's the one that is, let me pull it up.
So I guess what I'm saying is, would the action item be more to say what you feel is best based on the budget and?
I don't know that there has to be an action item
It's just
each
you're gonna
passed
go
on this.
figure it out.
Unless the board feels like the path that we're traveling is very concerning to you and you want to give it a little bit more direction, then I would welcome your direction. What we will continue to do is to continue to work with Elk Petroleum to flush out even more details. We will make a decision on one of these recommendations, and we'll probably start moving forward on it if we at least feel like the board is on board with that. If you would rather us come back for a formal action, we'll do that as well. I just don't want there to be any surprises to the board on such a big, this is a big matter, and it is gonna cost in my, we're probably, time we buy water rights and maybe put a tank up, it's another $100,000 or more. It's a significant investment. I did talk to Tyrell again today. We talked about looking into one more time turf, artificial turf. It is priced on here, and it's priced very high. And our maintenance department continues to say it's not the way to go because of all the equipment you have to buy and the maintenance, and then in so many years you have to replace that as well. But boy, I'm sure seeing it everywhere, even in homes.
It's amazing.
So, but
You know what, I think it's just like granite on kitchen countertops, you're seeing it everywhere, because people want things that are nicer than they've had.
Maybe
They're
that's
paying a
what it
lot more
is.
money for it, but society is spoiled, and if there's something nicer that's available,
well, we'd be very
Society
cautious
wants
to
it.
do it. I want to
However-
look at it, but I'd be very cautious because you put it in one place in the district, you might as well start gearing up to put it in many places.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just saying the reason I do have it personally is because of a water issue where I live. But there is zero maintenance. Once it's in, it's in. I mean,
yeah, and you don't
no
have
maintenance.
large areas, you have
We have-
smaller.
It's not
Smaller.
large, but we have the front pretty large.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Anyway,
once it's in, it's in.
So if the board would like to give any direction, I welcome it. If not, we're going to kind of keep creeping forward with this plan and try to, if we need to make decisions, we'll do those, but we'll come back with reports to the board. We'll keep you abreast. But I
Keep
want you to
that
be
down
aware
the
that,
line.
that this is happening.
Keep the grass alive.
If I understand right,
Oh, it's dying right now, so.
maybe I misunderstood, but I thought the water shares wouldn't be anything, there wouldn't be a cost to the water
There's
shares.
a possibility of that. I'm getting kind of mixed messages on that. One message is that, you know what, we probably lease it to the district or sell it to the district for next to nothing. And then another one I'm getting is maybe not. And so I think we just need to zero that in. I'm reluctant to say I know one way or the other on that. I've heard a little of both.
Okay, I
And when I
understood
went
that
to the
it's-
meeting firsthand, I did not get a definitive answer. They just kind of said, that'll be something we'll flush out. And I didn't realize at the time they met once a quarter.
Yeah, and
So-
it's, and those are water shares that belong to the county,
Water Conservancy.
Water
District
Conservancy District within the county,
within the county.
and that
They're not-
is the kind of use that they look to.
They're not being used, and they, as I understand it, yes, it's not good if you have a lot of water not being used. You actually would
Right.
like it to be used,
Right,
so.
and so I understood that would be no cost, but
That may be true.
You'll find that out.
I'll find that out.
yeah.
Okay.
waiting for a
Yeah, but we
text,
need
but-
to just get some water to the grass.
It's dying, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
it's
see, we've been
dying.
cut back in the last 3 weeks. It's been really, they let us know. I've seen them email Kedrick off and on that, hey, we need the water off for a little bit. We're trying to use it as much as they let us, but
Do we even need to just dump water with the water truck
maybe we
here and there, just
might
to
need
soak it,
I don't know.
to save it? It were better to save it than let it
We
go.
might could look into what it would cost to
come
haul a
back.
bunch of trucks, but it would be pricey.
Even if
It'll
it
come
was
back.
a couple minutes here and there, I don't know. Okay.
Water pump down by the river.
Just hook on Lucille's hose. Lucille, get your hose out and stick it.
I know.
How far will your sprinkler reach?
Okay, number 15, the board meeting details.
Okay, so board, I am looking for just a little direction here. I've shared the board meetings for next year with my principals, and I did get one request, and if this is agreeable, I'd love for you to make a motion and do this. There was a request to flip a little bit of the order of schools reporting. There was at least one school that felt like I'm always first, and I'd like to not always be first. But so I have a copy of it here somewhere, but if you want to pull that up, Matt. I would, if you would entertain it, I'd love to put like Bluff Elementary first and move PES and Bluff, flip those two. I don't think that would be a huge change in anything. If you'll see that,
Do we need to put a school in first that's been in, I mean, those river agent schools will barely have gone back.
yeah, we
Would we
could,
rather you could put MES in October, and
Could.
MHS that's been in for a year.
let's do that. That would work too. Let's
I'm
put
thinking we
MES
should.
and MHS right at the very top.
In September?
Yeah,
So-
I just think those other schools need a little bit of time for some data. I mean, we're gonna ask them what their challenges are, and that's like a no-brainer.
That's true.
You know what I mean? We've gotta,
So we could definitely move MHS up and flip them with Monument Valley and put them down. Then it would be, so we wouldn't have anybody till November, and that would be Bluff out of the river region, and they're okay going there. So I think that would be the best way to go right there. That one change, I think, would do it, if we can do that. So MHS and Monument Valley will flip. And other than that, I think it could stay the same. If you'll make that motion, I think
Okay.
technically that should be made by a motion because you've approved this.
Yeah.
The other thing that I don't think needs a motion, you can certainly include it in a motion, but I would like to make sure we know how to prepare. So the two other things are, do we want to have a July board meeting? Well, not do we want to, are we having a July board meeting? I've looked at things and I'll be honest, this is the first summer that I've looked at it and thought there is a possibility of no July board meeting. I don't think there's anything that's just really pressing and has to be addressed. We could probably get to August and be fine. That's when we'll bring back our action plans, that's when we'll bring our reentry plan back. But those things won't even be ready for July. So July will either be very light or we do not have a July board meeting. And then the next thing that I'd like you to maybe give a little direction on is we have broadcasted these meetings for the last year. We're going to go, we've already made a decision, we're going to go back to locations. Are we still going to broadcast from locations? We've looked at our numbers, and our numbers show that we generally have, help me with this, Aaron, but we generally have 100, 200, what's the most we've ever had?
250 views usually, so.
And they're not all joining us live, because these are recorded. Many of those views are watched later, but that is a benefit of broadcasting where you can record it and provide that opportunity. So I'm asking you for a little direction. If we do, we would need Aaron to work closely. He would probably most likely need to travel with this on board meetings, and he would work probably with the tech or teachers in the building to have a similar setup like this wherever we're at. I would also let you know that we had a discussion with principals. They would really recommend, they very much appreciated the broadcast. So their voice and their input has been to continue the broadcast.
Parents have appreciated it.
And I think that doesn't need a motion. You just let me know that's what you'd like, so.
are you willing to go with this?
Yeah,
We're fun.
you guys are fun.
So you just plan on it.
Okay.
Are we good for not meeting in July, anything with closed session items then as well?
Yep, I think there's nothing, as far as I know, there are definitely some things we'll talk about today that could factor into that, but I think really we could be fine there too.
In 2 weeks, you'd probably know a lot more. I mean, so we could say no, but then in 2 weeks, if you felt there was enough.
Possibly, yeah. We just
Are
need
we
to
good
give the
with that?
notice to the public.
Well, yeah, we'd have to let them know every time. Are we good?
We can do either way. We could plan on meeting and then you could also let us know that if we don't need to, or, I mean, either way, it could be flexible up until the first week in July. And then we would need to make plans to meet or not meet.
Keep it on there, and then if not, I mean, we'd rather not, but if we have to.
Well, sometimes, and I know the reason we've met for it is just so that August meeting with the busyness of, school starting and everything is not a completely crazy.
Meeting.
I think we put June, July, and August on today's agenda, so look how long it is.
We tried.
Okay, number 16. That's
Number 16, again, I'm just making the board, I want you to be fully aware and involved as deeply as you would like to be. We've received ESSER 1 money. That's gone. That went in almost exclusively into our landline project. We've received ESSER 2 money. We're presently spending in a number of areas to target learning. That's in the neighborhood of $2 million that's being spent in areas. And now we will receive over $6 million in ESSER 3. And that plan has to be developed by August 20th and submitted back to the state. So again, but on August 11th, what I wanted the board to be aware is we will start having strategic meetings with district administration and wherever needed to develop a budget and an action plan of how to spend $6 million. ESSER 3 can be spent much more broadly than could the other ESSER funds. This can involve, as far as I understand now, we'll learn more, but my initial understanding is it can involve even some capital, like our HVAC projects, and some of those could possibly fit into ESSER 3. And it's just a little bit more broad into how it could be spent. It could possibly be spent on things like putting audio enhancement in our rooms that would be upgrades to those kind of things. Students that hear better, learn better. So anyway, we will look at that money, and it is my plan to bring back to the board in August, before it has to be submitted, an action plan of how we are proposing to spend that money, so that you're aware before it goes to the state and have an opportunity for input. But I want you to be aware that will be playing out through July, and it will probably take quite a few meetings to pull that off.
Yes, just to go back to the water shares. I just got it, I just checked on a text. Here is the answer, because I didn't ask the question correctly. Not shares, but the Water Conservancy District owns a certain number of acre feet per year, and there is no cost.
Oh, great.
So to that, there is.
And we're asking for 200 acre feet of water. That's what we're asking.
And it's already there, not being used, and
Great.
and so to that part of that, there is no cost.
Perfect. That'll help. Okay.
And number 17,
Number 17, I would just, if there's any
Secondary.
questions or concerns, that's a standard thing to look at our activities schedules, to look at those for anything over 150 miles by Utah High School Association rules has to have board approval, and to look at, any excessive out of school time or excessive travel. Those are the things.
so now we're trying to approve those, but a lot of those don't have their schedules.
Yeah, there's
So
some that are missing.
yeah, that's the other thing, and not that I'm dying to have an extra meeting when we don't need it, but when we don't approve a schedule, fall sports schedules clear until August, that's kind of, could we have a minimal electronic meeting where those
Possible.
kinds of things
We can have an in-person meeting. That's
are approved?
completely what you would like to do.
Well, I'm just trying to, that's late to approve those schedules.
So my question is, if we approve these that we have in front of us, because they are attached, the ones that come in with the schedule with the holes in, we just
We
do that in August, just on those little ones?
Yeah, I mean.
Just
good,
on
yes.
that portion of that one? we would
Anything
have
that,
to zone?
anything that's not in, that isn't here would have to be approved later.
Okay. Did anybody have questions on the schedules? Steve? Lucio? Mary? No. All right. Okay, if we would like to, we can go in closed session until about no later than 5:30.
We have two things to go in for. We have real property and we have possible litigation.
So we can do that before the break?
Do we not have any personnel?
Yeah. Let's see. Matt?
No.
Okay. All right. So I need a motion to go into closed session for the discussion of purchase, exchange, or lease of real property and litigation.
I move to go into closed session to discuss purchase, exchange, or lease of real property and litigation.
Motion by Steve.
Sick.
Who'd you put? Nelson or Russo? Second. Okay, that's fine. Okay, roll call.
Mary Shumway, yes.
So Cody, yes.
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Amon, yes.
Nelson Delamain, yes.
Okay. So let's stop it from. Okay, we'll go in until about 5:30, the latest. Okay, we have one public comment and then we have one that is to be read. Matt, do you want to read that one first and then we'll let me come?
Okay, this comment is from Linnell Porter. I am writing concerning a situation that was handled in my child's third grade class at BES. All year, your emails to parents explained, in an effort to be transparent, the need for caution was taken to quarantine individuals who were exposed to coronavirus. You then stated, we will take all appropriate steps to ensure the safety of students, faculty, and staff. This was not what happened in May in my child's classroom. In April, parents, students, board members, and the superintendent made the decision to allow students to have a mask exemption. This choice carried a consequence that per health department and state guidelines, anyone exposed to a positive case would need to follow protocol and quarantine. All year you asked students and families to follow that protocol. In May, students and faculty in my child's class were exposed to a positive case of coronavirus. So when the consequences came for these parents/students to quarantine due to their choice not to wear a mask, you changed your guidelines. You allowed those exposed to return to the classroom and increased my child's risk of contracting the coronavirus. In an effort to be transparent, I believe you owe the remaining student body and parents an explanation. You did not ensure the safety of students, faculty, and staff. By allowing those students to come back to class without quarantining, you showed the priority was not to protect the majority of your student body. By making this decision, you broke our trust in you. I urge you to reevaluate your approach to meeting the needs of all students, faculty, and staff of the San Juan School District. Linnell Porter.
Nico, welcome.
I guess there's a mic here now.
Oh, there is. You get to be like official.
Wow.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Nico Crippen. I'm the mother of 4 kids who have been in San Juan School District. I just want to say that despite all the problems that we've had from COVID last year, there have been a few good things that have come out of it. One of them is the recording of these meetings. I think it's helped tremendously. So parents and other community members can watch, even if they're not available at the time that it's being held. And I also want to thank you all for all the time and effort and thought that you've put into all of the things that you've had to deal with this year. I know it hasn't been easy, and I know that some of it's ongoing, but just as a matter of public record, I want you all to know that I appreciate what you've been doing for our kids, and I know that a lot of other parents also appreciate. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to just continue on our agenda at 6:15. We should be done by 6:15, but we will stop to go into our budget hearing, so. And Eva, there's no more public comment, correct?
Can you refresh one more time? Nothing.
Okay, all right, so I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, second? Lucille, some discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. All right, let's go down to our action items, and Steve and I have gone through the ones that pertain to our agenda. So number 2, a motion for a change on that board meeting schedule.
I will entertain a motion for the board meeting schedule for 2021 and 22 school year with the changes of location from the September board meeting at Monument Valley to take place at the Bluff Elementary School. In other words, it's the switch of location.
Was it MES or MHS?
Or MHS, I'm sorry. Yes.
All right, motion by Nelson, second.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, okay, number 3, sale of the former Bluff Elementary School property.
I will motion to accept the sale of the former Bluff Elementary School and property.
Do we need to say who it's to?
Yeah, I think we
We can
do, and
say
I,
who it's to.
and at this point, I think, generally, I know in the past, I've gone back and listened to meetings, this is a point where you would divulge the details.
All of the details.
Yep, so the public is aware.
All right, Nelson.
To the school sale of Bluff City Council. You go into details
Do we
on
need
that?
to do the amount
For the
for
amount?
the
of-
motion? Okay.
You know, 307, 307, $500.
In the amount of $307,000,
500.
$500, $500.
Okay, motion by Nelson. Second, Lucille, discussion. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay,
I abstain due
All right.
to a conflict of interest of one of the proposals on the property.
okay. Did you get all that? An abstain? And a nay? And three yeses, okay. All right, a motion for the MHS School Land Trust Amendment.
I move to approve the, say, MHS School Land Trust Amendment.
Okay, motion by Mary.
Second.
Second by Nelson. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, number 7, San Juan School District Policy 5510 graduation requirements that were, and that's what Mr. Murdoch had explained to us, so if you want to make a motion.
Wait, we skipped 5.
No action.
Is that the one, we're not
Because
doing
we-
action? Okay.
That was for informational only.
Okay,
Yes, so, okay.
all right, sorry.
And 6.
Back-
No, you're good. Number 7 is the one I set up the motion for.
Okay, I move to pass policy, well, or,
That-
I don't know if we're at the point of passing, so we've seen it once, so. I guess
That's
I'm
the
not
one
sure.
where he was gonna tweak a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you don't
Yeah.
want to make the motion, you're welcome to not.
Yeah, I withdraw what I started.
Okay. Motion. Okay, hearing none. Number 8, San Juan School District Special Education Department Policy and Procedures Application. I don't think we gave any changes on that, did we? No. So that, we did not have any changes for that. So if anybody wants to make a motion on that.
I move to approve the San Juan School District Special Education Department Policy and Procedures adoption.
Okay. Motion by Steve. Second. Second by Lucille. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. All right, and number 9, we are just approving the recommended time schedule for the AB schedule as presented by administration. So, a motion for that, number 9. If we don't make a motion, we'll let admin go ahead. Okay.
Well, then, no, I'll move, I'll move to approve, an AB schedule that starts the same time we always started.
Okay, so Mary wants to keep the time the same. Is there a motion? I mean, a second.
Are you saying started at 8 across the district?
So she wants to, so
Well,
it's
there's not a
different than.
second, there's not a second, so there's supposed to not be any discussion.
Just
Oh.
clarifying the motion.
Yeah, we're just clarifying the motion.
Okay, second for discussion.
Okay,
Okay.
discussion?
My reasoning for making that motion is that overwhelmingly, the people who responded from the area that I represent, that is their preference.
Did you want to?
Yeah, that's one thing I was noticing as well on both the parental survey and the staff survey. It had start the same time as current as by far, being the most important aspect. staff and parents. So I guess I'm a little bit conflicted about why you're recommending that 8:25. So a little bit more explanation on that.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're seeing the same level of passion about filling this out. I know with working with the stakeholders across the district, especially in the river region, Lucille and Nelson's region that you probably more predominantly cover, they're very passionate about as late a start as possible. So I know that's on there. I also have gotten feedback in the last week from a principal in Blanding of one of our secondary schools that strongly advocates for a later start, believing that is the way to go. And so it's just really a split. You get into Monticello and it's a split. Blanding does definitely lean that way. But trying to put it together district-wide, you see, and if we go at 8, I'd have to pull that schedule back up. But if we go at 8, that changes the variables too of the collaboration time and the flex time. And those were the highest priorities going in for the staff members. So I just know, anyway, it could be done. I know there'll be a lot of outcry of staff across the district. Now, not all staff, there'll be some very happy staff, but.
I think for myself and the.
So let's look at that. Look actually at.
The questions that.
It's the other example, I think.
The questions that staff had that expressed to me is that they didn't have the answer of what will that time look like when students are dropped off. There'll be parents and staff are being told there will be proper supervision. We're not going to take, district's not going to take on the liability of having kids unsupervised, but there is not information so far that I've heard that shows how they're going to be supervised, how that will be productive time.
I would say you're going to see it very similar to Tuesday. We already have that in our schools. You're going to see breakfast play a big role in that. Breakfast, for the most part, the kids always go to breakfast for 15 minutes or so. Then you would see what you'd see basically on a Tuesday. You do have to have supervision, and I think we'd get better at it. But anyway, that's definitely we'd definitely have to be proactive and work on that. That's what it would be like.
Yeah, on a Friday that I drove by, so it wasn't a Tuesday, but on a Friday I drove by Landing Elementary, and the two playgrounds combined, I quickly counted about 45 students on the two playgrounds, and they were not supervised that I could see, and maybe I couldn't see everything. I know there's great concern from parents at the middle school and from some staff members that I've heard too as well, that that's a time frame and an age group that they're very concerned could be some real problems if the proper supervision isn't there.
I think that one of the big variables of starting at 8 is it's very difficult to get both the flex and the collaboration time in, now that I'm remembering it. Because the way that it's designed is to get the collaboration time in before you have students in the building. That's why you have a 8:25 start. So if you start at 8, you really can't get that collaboration time in the morning. So then again, you're facing not having it. So you lose one of those big rocks. But.
Okay. So let's.
If we, I know schools need to know if they're doing an A/B schedule. How important is it, and how important is it to know what the exact start time is right now and get questions answered? However, I don't think it changes what the highest priority for parents in Blanding and that they've expressed. They requested
We've got to
specifically.
suspend our meeting, sorry.
Oh, we do.
We can come back to this.
6:15. We'll have to come back.
All
Sorry.
right.
Okay. So now we're gonna go into section J on our agenda, if you're following the agenda. So it'll be our public hearing regarding our budget. So we will turn the time over to Ron and Matt to go over that,
Yep.
your information.
And
Do
time,
we need a motion to go into the hearing or?
No.
No.
Okay.
we're just suspending our regular meeting and going into a public hearing.
10 minutes.
So yeah, appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the budget. We did present the budget last month, and so it's been available, but we didn't have all the numbers. So you should have some updated sheets that are available to you now. They are also attached to the board agenda. And those updated sheets reflect the most current numbers that we've received from the Utah Tax Commissions and the county. So we believe we have the right information now to look at this. You know, to really get in the middle of this and to dive into it, if you look at page 52, you can see the certified rate that is being proposed, and we have some figures that work off of the certified rate. And I will tell you, that's going to be my recommendation, is to go with that certified rate. The certified rate is actually dropping. If we look at the certified rate from last year, our rate for taxes is decreasing. You can even see on page 52 of the, it might not be the same page in your book, but it's the hand, it might be, it's right there. What page is that?
52.
That's 52, okay, so that's the same, yeah. 52. If you look at the middle of that, you can actually see that if you were to assess a home valued at $275,000, and then you can look at how that would have played out over the last 5 or 6 years, clear back to 2016, 2017. But the two that we might look at to focus in on is the 2021 was basically a $275,000 home would have had $1,158 tax assessed to it. If you move over to the estimated budget, if we stay with the certified rate, that tax dollar amount actually decreases. Now there's other variables involved that will play into effect when a homeowner receives their actual tax amount, and we don't control those other variables, but we do control our tax rate. Our tax rate is made up of a number of levies, which you can see on that sheet. There's actually 5 of them. There used to be 4, but they pulled that charter levy out and kind of made it its own in the last 3 or 4 years. And those levies are what make up, we're able to control 3 of those levies. There's 2 of those levies we do not even set. We do not set the minimum school program levy, and we do not set the charter levy. They're set by the state, so we have no control over those. The other 3 levies we do have some control over. We can change those. But it's very, very important to know that those levies, all 3 of them in some way play into matching funds. The voted leeway levy plays directly into matching funds, and we receive 3 state dollars for every 1 local dollar. So if you ever choose to cut that, and if you go below 1,600, that's the breaking point of where you start to lose matching funds. So clear back for quite a few years, you'll see that levy's always been 1,600 because it's been a strong recommendation never to dip below that, because if we lose $1 locally, we lose $4 total. The capital local levy also plays into some matching funds. There's a couple ways through growth and through districts that are on the less financial healthy basis, I would say. Those that are financially struggling more, there's also mechanisms that kick in to match in that local levy. And then the board local levy has your K-3 reading money in it. And if you drop too low, you start to affect that. Now there is some room there before you get to that point. But one of the reasons I would strongly recommend we stay with the certified rate is we really do not want to start losing matching funds. Another reason I would strongly recommend we stay with the certified rate is if we lose, we are really in a time where staying competitive, staying viable is critical. It really is. Recruiting, retaining. We just talked about earlier our special ed needs, and if you look at some of our needs and what we're hiring right now, if you open up the paper, I don't know if the list has ever been longer. And I'm getting a little nervous because June is slowly disappearing and July is the month before we start school. So yeah, it's becoming a little bit of some anxiety is building. And that's just one factor. One factor, there's lots of factors that go into recruiting and retaining, but certainly one key factor is also having the funds to provide quality jobs and competitive jobs where people look at that. And investment into education and keeping our programs strong and healthy. If we lose ground any particular year, it does compound in future years. So anyway, I think it's critical that we look at it in that measure. We did adopt a 6% budget this year, and there's hope that that might actually move us back up. And we presented some data a few board meetings ago, as many as, I don't know, quite a few board meetings ago now, but showed that we had dropped from in the top 5, top 3 actually, to very middle range now. And we're hoping that 6% starts to, it may have some influence to move us back up. But that's a real concern, is staying viable, staying competitive. And in any one year that we lose, it does compound into future years. So keep that in mind. And then, you know, the third reason that I would recommend, that I think is also a factor involved, and I can't speak for I have no data to support this, but I do think it is logical. You know, when you look at the amount of money that the individual homeowner would see relief from taxes if we do make some substantial cuts in taxes in our rate. It's interesting that when you break it down to the individual homeowner, you don't see much of a jump. You just don't. Even like in this drop, you're seeing 1,158 down to 1,149. Very close. I mean, what are we seeing? $9 drop there? And most homeowners, and I guess I can't say most because that would be incorrect. I don't have the data, but I would just say, for sure I do have data on this, that it has always been an interesting personal dilemma of what investment they want to put in education. And when and it's been interesting to say $9 a year, or even if it's $40 or $50 a year, break that down to 12 payments, versus investing in your child's education. That's been a debate that has played out when districts go looking to pass bonds or whatever. They're looking at do they feel comfortable in making an investment into education. So I believe, and I believe this, that our communities, I don't know if the gain for the individual taxpayer equals the loss once you add all that up to the district. It becomes pretty substantial. But individually, it's pretty minimal. Anyway, I don't know if that made sense, but I'm just recommending, and I turn the discussion over to the board, or if Matt or want to weigh in with anything.
Just to summarize really quickly, if I can, adopting the certified rate, in my opinion, and the superintendent and I talked about this, is the fiscally responsible thing to do. It is lowering the percentage of taxes levied by this school board. It is in no way, shape, or form in itself increasing taxes. It gets behind the commitment that you have made to invest in, our most valuable resource, which is our teachers and faculty and staff. And ultimately, in the long run, as we look at the matching funds and the compounding, it is by far and away the most responsible thing to do. So I hope that just kind of summarizes and echoes what the superintendent was trying to explain there, because it can get convoluted and you can look into a lot of mud on the walls and this, that, and the other, and how the systems work. But ultimately, the reason we're coming with this recommendation is because we do believe that it is responsible, it allows us to work towards our goals, and I hope that you guys can vote to support it.
All right. Eva, do we have any public comment, Kim?
There was one comment that was sent in via chat.
Regarding the budget?
Negative.
Okay. So the discussion's open for the board for a few minutes. Or do we want to make an action item and then we can discuss it?
I'll comment on the discussion, or the comments that have already been made. I mean, I like that the rate is down a little bit. I always appreciate when taxpayers are paying a little less. Our taxes are high, so when we're talking about if we were to increase it, which is what you were kind of, not for this year, but just in general, if there is an increase, it doesn't mean much because it's not very much. You're referring to the increase and not the total taxes that somebody pays on their property. If we're talking about just homes, that's one thing, but that's how a lot of people they have taxes, property taxes associated with their livelihoods. And we can really, increased taxes can be very detrimental to somebody's business and their livelihoods. So when we have that discussion, I always want to make sure that we understand we're taxing people's property. It's not just a home for a lot of people. Many people it is, but for this, I mean, because you brought that up is why I'm adding that, because it really doesn't apply as much this year because the proposal is to go down in taxes because that is the certified rate this year. So I'm thrilled about that, even though our taxes are high in San Juan County. We're the poorest county in the state and one of the poorest in the country, but yet we are highly taxed already. So that's one thing I want to keep in mind as well, that we do tax our citizens on the higher end rather on the lower end. So that's why I'm always happy to see it go lower. I also think that our citizenry, the people paying taxes, are happier about what they have to pay if they feel like they are their schools. Everybody doesn't get what they want, as our discussion as we discussed earlier. Parents don't all get what they want, students don't all get what they want, teachers, everybody can't have what they want. But when we make decisions that consider our public and we listen to them, we get, input and treat them in a way that we recognize it's their students, their children we are educating. They don't mind paying the taxes as much. And so I think those things go hand in hand of how we interact with our public, which I think we've been doing a really good job. And I appreciate the superintendent and our administration generally, everybody for the efforts that have gone into that, because I think it goes a long way with the public. If we're disregarding them at any one particular school or district, they get a little bit ticked about the taxes they're paying. But if they're part of that, they don't mind it so much. And if they see we're spending the money responsibly, a lot of times, waste to one person is not waste to another person. But if they see that we are being frivolous with their tax dollars, they're not happy about that either. So we want to not only be very conscientious about how we spend taxpayer dollars, but we want to have it look like as well. It needs to look like what we're doing is directly responsible and not fluff. That's my 2 cents. We lost our president. We can't do anything.
Okay.
But I'm in favor of this proposed tax rate.
More comments? Okay. So
It is an action item.
let's make an action item to approve the 2021-2022 budget. Do I need a motion?
I move to accept the certified rate that the county has provided to us, .007597 as our tax rate for the 2021-2022 year.
Okay, motion by Mary,
I'll second.
second by anything else? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, let's go back to our last 2 action items. So,
Madam President,
yes.
on that, I believe we still need a motion to both adopt the
Oh,
revised 2021 budget and the proposed 2020 budget. Or
Is it revised, amended, does it matter?
It's revised.
Revised.
Revised, and then the proposed 21-22 budget.
All right, so I'm not gonna reiterate that because Matt just said this, so whoever wants to make the motion, knock yourself out.
I move to, well, never.
Go.
I move to approve the revised 2021 budget and to approve the 21-22 proposed budget.
Okay, motion by Mary. Second by Lucille. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thanks for that. All right, back to, so we were in the middle of the motion on number 9. So Mary's motion was to keep the start time at 8. That's what we'll be voting on. So we're clear on that? Any more discussion? Nelson?
It seems to be confusing. Mountain region, I guess I would have to say, would want that at 8 o'clock. And the river regions, like Superintendent said, the majority of the parents down there want to go with the other schedule. So kind of, I wrestle with that. And this is something that I've mentioned in the past. We tend to start doing things 2 different ways. The separation, which continues to bother me, rather than across the board as a whole district. We're starting to do 2 different things. And I keep thinking once this pandemic is over, we'll come back to one game plan, but it's not happening. It's not happening yet.
So remind me, if we do the 825, it is across the board for the district for the secondaries.
That's what I
So
was
it'd
recommending.
be yours
I will come back to
and
this
ours.
document again, because we did explore this. This was a way to explore trying to provide the 8 a.m. start for the mountain region, where you've identified that the majority are in that camp, and then going to the in the river region, they would have the later start. Now this would mean that the mountain region would start with their flex. Let's see, their flex time would be from 8 to 8:36. They would be doing their intervention and their extensions, and then they would work down through it and have teacher collaboration at the end of the day. The river region would just be flipping those 2, but because they did their teacher collaboration in the morning, they both could start first period at 8:40. This would actually move the start of school back to 8:40, but the students in the mountain region would start at 8. But I will tell you, the more this has been analyzed by at least one school in Blanding, they really struggle with it. They think number one, the teacher collaboration at the end of the day will be a struggle, because there'll be pressure to get a lot of things going, and they struggle even with the flex time in first thing in the morning like that. And that's why I'm saying is there's some movement even in the mountain region, in the Blanding area, but it's not reflected in the data, but it is there. The bigger problem with this has been, when I talked to you before, I said that the buses would be paid for. I've drilled into that a little deeper. The buses are reimbursed at 70%. So the district would have additional cost with some busing changes. We would have to look at busing differently. Plus the challenge of finding 2 additional bus drivers, which has been very, very challenging. We ended the year with our bus maintenance people, we're driving routes to fill in. So there's another area that we are really struggling to fill, just special ed, it's across food service, transportation. We're struggling. It's almost like there's not enough workers right now or something, but
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, so those are the challenges that when this came together, and that's why I said, I don't know if we can pull the bus off, it's extra cost, I don't know if we can find the drivers. This could open up another sensitive area, which we've been sensitive in the past, is you could say, well, wait a minute, those kids that are being bused from the river region to the mountain region are going pretty much by a river region school to come to Blanding. And we have been aware of that for years, that we are busing secondary students to Blanding that could possibly go to Whitehorse. Those kids are coming from the Whitehorse area. That's been a sensitive area. If parents have felt like that bus was being threatened, we've had parent input on that. We've had chapter house leadership input on that. So that's very sensitive, that I didn't know that we want to even go there unless we really want to go there. We want to make sure we want to go there is what I'm saying. But there's just a lot of issues to that. That's what led me back to the 8:25 start.
Matt.
Just to speak to a question that was posed earlier concerning about the decision and the timing of the decision. As we sit here discussing this and having had a break for budget, I have received several messages saying, it is critical that, if at all possible, please get the board to make a decision on what time, and what schedule and what times it will be starting. I know that a lot of our teachers are feeling very anxious about the unknown. I know that personally because I'm married to one who's very anxious. That's an outside issue.
But Nelson, I agree with on the fact that sometimes I feel that division to try and fill that void, but is to have the one time, but I don't know.
Well, as far as scheduling goes, I know it's always been important to stay on one schedule for the reasons that have already been talked about. One is busing. We should do some sharing of buses. And maybe it's just that bus that goes, that brings students up here. And then the distance ed. Those are the two really important reasons to stay on the same schedule. Other than that, the beauty of having community schools is that they can fit the needs of the communities. I think when those two things don't exist, we ought to appreciate the fact that a school should reflect the wishes of a community, and that our entire district doesn't have to do the same thing just for the sake of, we ought to all be on the same page. It's the beauty of things to reflect the needs and wants of particular communities within schools. This, for me, not only did the parents who I represent have that strong on their list, but I don't believe there are enough answers about what does flex time look like for the full spectrum of the students. I feel like, and I know the timing is, essential, that people want to know, are we going AB and what time will it start? My question earlier was, can we commit to going AB and get answers to some of these other questions, like what will flex time look like? I know San Juan High School at one point in time said, and I don't know if this is an option, I haven't ever gotten any more feedback or more information, that flex time could look like an incentive for students. If you don't need that, I don't want to call it remediation, because I don't always see it as remediation. I think it is focused education for each student. And it's not necessarily because you're behind you need this, but this is education that will help you that you don't have yet. But that incentive that if you're caught up and you've done everything, then you don't possibly even have to attend that flex time. Now, that's what I was told once, that might be a possibility.
Well, that came up, I think, when we had the parent meeting. We discussed possibly putting it at the end of the day, and maybe they don't need it and they could go home. But I don't know that's exactly what.
Or if students are gone, leaving on an activity, that's what they would miss instead of core instruction that is, I would hope, more important than flex time. So I personally don't have enough answers. Can we approve an AB schedule and iron out some of these details?
I think the staff's already going forward with an AB. That was pretty much a consensus among us. But the thing that I find interesting is that here we have this survey. How many results did we get from the COVID survey? 1,000?
1,200 to 1,300.
I mean, the thing that I find interesting about this survey is we only had a total of 337 responses, and we're basing this entire decision off of 337 people. I think, which every response is valid, but I also feel like if the recommendation from staff is more highly in favor of going with the 825, which suffices both the region, mountain schools, I guess maybe I feel like there would have been a little bit more higher on the responses if it was, I mean, something everyone is totally bought into on that a little bit. And not that they're not valid, like I said, but I find that we might have had a little bit stronger on the response, but do you have anything, Steve? Oh, well, do you want to reiterate what you had said?
No.
Okay.
Reiterate.
I mean, I will not
what I
reiterate, do
said.
you want to add to what you had said earlier?
Well, I guess I just keep going back to, well, my constituents really have that one criteria as important. So
Okay.
I'm just struggling a little bit with it because of that. But.
Sure. Lucille, did you have anything else?
I know my area and parents from the river region where we live would rather go to later start.
The same in my area as well as Lucille's area. I've chatted with some people or some parents there too as well, and teachers. They are in favor of having that teacher and collaboration prep in the mornings versus the other one. I wish there was some sort of a title to these two different times.
Like A and B?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could
Refer to them?
refer to them and make that motion onto exactly which one we're. But yeah.
So let's vote on this motion.
But most of the, by far the most parent responses came from Blanding.
2/3.
And the percentage of parent, I mean, they cared about this issue more to respond. And so I just feel like I won't ignore that.
Well, we'll just vote. So Mary's motion is to start school at 8 o'clock. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so now the motion, so anyhow, the motion didn't carry. So now I guess we'll make a motion to start with the one the administration recommends at the 8:25. So do you have a motion for that?
I will make a motion to go with the recommendation of superintendents 8:25 a.m.
Okay.
Correct.
Motion by Nelson, second by Lucille. Discussion?
The part that I really don't like about this, if this is going to pass, is that the elementary schools are in no way tied to anything. So we may have a later start for secondary. And then elementary might go ahead and start at 8 o'clock, except for on Tuesdays it's going to be, and that's too many things for parents to like, what time does school start at which school and what day is it? Is it Tuesday? Is it Monday? That's too confusing.
No, the motion is to have the same, to get rid of the Tuesday. We have the same start every day.
No, it doesn't address elementary schools.
My
So
recommendation
elementary-
did not address elementary schools, but
So-
I did say, I don't think you'll see late start Tuesday anymore.
But-
My motion did say that, because they will readdress late start Tuesday. So we wouldn't, I doubt we'll see that. I do think you could see, if Blanding Elementary wants to stay at 8, there's nothing in my recommendation that
But
says
then they would
can't.
have late start, well, and if everybody's gonna start late, I would suggest that the elementaries are closer in line with the start of secondaries. It wouldn't have to be the exact same time, but
And-
5 to 10 minutes.
And the only reason I didn't make that recommendation, in my personal mind, that makes some sense, but knowing that the highest priority and trying to give at least some people that could possibly not be included, there's no tie to Blanding Elementary to secondary. So I was thinking, well, at least they could have their number one priority.
So
which is stay
one
the
of the
same.
parents who's been most vocal to me and talked to me more than any, and has filled out this, is actually works at Blanding Elementary, has a child at Blanding Elementary, has a child at, it does affect everybody.
It could, to some
It,
degree.
it does, most people,
I don't know
Well-
about most people, but it does
Yeah.
affect some people.
yeah.
If I have a child in elementary and a child in the high school, they will definitely get used to the high school, either, figuring out the variables involved to get them to school at the right time. The elementary child will probably continue on the same mode that we've been doing forever, for the parent.
And I
But-
dislike that even worse, that we have two drastically different start times, plus a change, a late start on. This motion wouldn't guarantee that there's not gonna be a late start, and that's what parents hate the most.
You
Is
will
that
know in
late Tuesday?
3 months how this is gonna work if you have to make adjustments.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to monitor and see, and it'll definitely require some monitoring and adjusting.
Okay, we're gonna vote. All in favor of
Aye.
Nelson's motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. All right, secondary schools fall 2021 activity report in the 150-mile forms. I need a motion.
I move to approve, let me find it. The fall 2021 activity report in the 150-mile forms.
Okay, motion by Mary. Second by Lisa, discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've reached the end of our agenda except for information items.
Yep, I can give you just a little bit. Are you getting flyers like,
Yes.
these are coming to you, okay. This was one that caught my interest just a little. I may try to attend that and just, we've had a few questions over Robert's rules and, anyway, I might just try to attend. I just want to make sure you're having those. I spoke to the leadership.
It's at
Can I-
7, not 7:30.
Oh, did I have it?
And
Yeah, you're right.
I just want to ask, did anybody Zoom, because these are Zoom meetings, did anybody join that last Zoom training? No? These are actually fairly easy to do, and
Did you?
USDA.
Which one
I
was
did.
it on?
Yeah, now I can't remember
was
what,
it on?
but it was good. I'd have to go back to my
Can't remember
notes.
what it was on.
But it was good. It's worth tuning into, and if you don't like it, then, multitask.
I like Robert, I'll be there.
Okay.
I actually have a commitment that night, so I can't.
Just letting you know of our next leadership days, I referred to these, July 19th and 20th, and then our next board meeting, I put that in there because I wasn't sure. Right now, it'll be scheduled for July, look that up on your
And
calendars.
what is this?
If we cover
Our
that
next
later
school
board
board,
meeting.
Oh.
if we do have one. We didn't officially not have one, so we will have one on the schedule. As it gets
July
closer, I
21st.
can let you know what's, what looks pressing, what doesn't, and we can make a decision as to whether we have a July meeting or not. July what?
21st.
21st. So I'll put that in there.
Questionable.
All
All right, we're adjourned.
Very good, thank you.
Hey, can I just say something while everybody's still here? I am so proud of you guys for having me motor through that agenda. I'd give each of you a hug if it was appropriate.